My name doesn't matter much anymore. I used to think jobs like mine were invisible. Background noise in the endless hum of a city that never shuts up. But now I think there's a reason we're hidden away. A reason people forget that someone has to be awake to answer when the phone rings at 3 in the morning. I work nights in a dispatch center, just a single-story brick building, gray and tired, with buzzing fluorescent lights that make the place feel like it hasn't slept in decades. The walls are lined with old maps, the kind with fading ink, roads that don't even exist anymore. My desk is a cheap laminate thing that's been scratched so many times I sometimes trace the grooves with my finger just to stay awake. Nights are usually slow. I drink bad coffee, half burnt from the pot, and fight to keep my eyelids from slipping shut. Some nights the phone doesn't ring at all. Other nights it rings once, maybe twice, with someone slurring their words after a fight or asking about noise in their yard. Nothing dramatic. Nothing like what I'm about to tell you. It was a Tuesday. Or maybe Wednesday. I can't remember now, only that the hours bled together like ink in water. The phone rang once, sharp, cutting through the stale air. I picked it up like I always do, pressing the receiver against my ear. "Dispatch, what's your emergency?" I said, my voice flat, tired, rehearsed. At first, nothing. Just a hiss. Not the kind of silence you get when nobody's there, but that strange, crawling static, like the radio between stations. I adjusted the headset, thinking maybe the line was bad. Dispatch. "Can you hear me?" I asked again. There it was, a faint sound beneath the static. Breathing, slow, unsteady, like someone holding the receiver too close, their lungs catching on every inhale. "Hello?" I leaned forward in my chair. "If you can hear me, say something." The breathing grew sharper, ragged, uneven. A low murmur of static pressed at the edges of my ear, and for a moment I thought I heard words inside it, but they were too soft, too broken apart. "Are you hurt?" I asked. "Are you safe right now?" The hiss swallowed the line like a tide pulling back. Then, faintly, like someone trapped miles away, came a voice. "Help!" That single word nearly stopped my heart. It was thin, desperate, swallowed by the noise. I straightened in my chair, suddenly awake, scribbling the time down on the pad in front of me. "I can hear you," I said quickly. "Tell me where you are. We'll send someone." There was a pause, then a sound I'll never forget. A sob. Quiet, broken, carrying something raw inside it. "Please," the voice whispered. It was hard to tell if it was a man or a woman. The static tore the edges away, leaving only that trembling plea. "You have to stay with me," I urged. My voice cracked in the silence of the room. "Just tell me what happened." "Tell me where you are." Another pause. Then the line crackled like a burst of electricity. And the voice came again, louder this time, frantic. Choked with terror. "They're coming!" The words cut off, as if someone had reached into the line and sliced it clean in half. Just static again. Just breathing. My skin crawled. I tapped the phone base, checked the wires, but it was steady. Alive. Whoever was on the other side was still there, still breathing. "Who's coming?" I asked, my throat dry. The static rose and fell, carrying faint scratches of sound that could have been anything. A door creaking. A footstep, something dragged across the floor. Then the breathing quickened. It was heavy, panicked, like someone running. I clutched the receiver, trying to catch fragments of words, but they kept breaking apart in the noise. "Stay on the line," I begged. "Just stay with me. I'm here." Another sob. Then another attempt at speech. "Please don't let them..." The words died again, replaced by a high-pitched whine that stabbed into my ear. I jerked the receiver back, heart hammering. When I pressed it close again, all I heard was silence. Not static. Not breathing, nothing. "Hello?" I whispered. "Are you there?" Dead air. I sat there for what felt like forever, waiting for the line to come alive again. My hand shook around the receiver and the coffee in my stomach felt sour. Finally, I set the phone down, but I couldn't stop staring at it, like it was some animal that might bite if I looked away. Calls cut off all the time. Bad reception. Drunks fumbling with their phones, kids playing pranks. But this wasn't that. I know what I heard. I pulled up the call log on the computer. The number was strange, no area code I recognized. Just a long, broken sequence of digits that didn't look real at all. I tried dialing it back, but the line gave me nothing. No ring, no busy signal. Just that hollow silence, the kind that makes your skin feel too tight. For the rest of the shift, I couldn't shake it. Every time the air conditioner kicked on, I thought I heard that voice again. Every flicker of the fluorescent lights felt like the beginning of something else. I wrote a report, but what could I even say? Unidentified caller, static, breathing, possible cry for help. It looked insane on paper. When the sun finally rose, I stepped outside into the gray light. But even then, I kept hearing the echo. That whisper of help, that broken sob. I told myself it was just one of those things, a fluke. Lines cross, signals break, people do strange things in the dark. But that night, when I came back from my shift, the phone rang again, and I swear, it was the same static. The same breathing, the same voice trying to claw its way through the dead air. That was the night everything changed. That was the night I realized some calls don't come from anywhere we can trace. Some voices aren't meant to be heard at all. I couldn't stop thinking about the call. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that broken, desperate voice hovering behind the static. The police had to know about it. I didn't have a choice. The next morning, I called in and gave them the number, the time, everything I could remember. It didn't take long for them to trace it. A detective named Harris called me himself, a deep, steady voice that somehow made me feel smaller, like a kid caught in the rain. "Are you sure you're not imagining this?" he asked. "I'm not," I said, though my own voice sounded shaky. "It's real." I heard someone on the line. They were... "Save it for the report," he interrupted gently. "Just give me the facts." I sent him the logs, the number, the timestamps, everything. He promised they'd check it out. A few hours later, Harris called again. Numbers registered to an abandoned farmhouse outside the county. No one's lived there for decades. Electricity cut years ago. "You still there?" I swallowed hard. "Yes," he paused. "We're sending a unit. It's probably nothing, but you did the right thing. Stay put." I hung up and sat in the quiet of my dispatch office, my chest tight. I wanted to believe it was a prank, a misdial, some weird cross-line interference. But deep down, I knew it wasn't. By nightfall, I couldn't wait any longer. I had to know. I had to hear it again. The phone rang just after midnight. I froze. My hand trembled as I lifted the receiver. Static first. The low, crawling hiss, and then breathing. Slow, uneven. "Hello?" I said. My voice was almost a whisper. "Please," the voice said, so faint I could barely catch it. I scribbled down the timestamp and the number. I tried to speak gently. "We're tracing this call. Police are on the way. Can you—" The line crackled violently, a harsh sound that made my ears ache. Then it went silent. I sank back in my chair, the room spinning slightly, my hands clammy. When Harris finally called to tell me officers were on their way, I felt a hollow kind of relief. The farmhouse was exactly what I expected. Isolated, surrounded by overgrown fields, windows dark and empty like hollow eyes. The officers called me when they arrived. "Inside looks abandoned," Harris said. "No electricity, no furniture, nothing except dust and cobwebs. Phone line still active. We're checking the house, but it's like the call is coming from nowhere." I imagined the line snaking through walls and rusted poles, carrying that voice through decades of broken circuits. "They're probably just old wires picking up interference," I said, though my stomach twisted. Harris didn't answer. I could almost hear him staring at the empty rooms, feeling the same chill I felt just thinking about it. He called back a few hours later. "We checked every inch, nothing, not a single person. The line is still active, but the house is empty. Completely empty. Weirdest thing I've ever seen." I sat at my desk, listening to the static through my headset. It was quieter tonight, almost polite, as if the line itself was waiting for me to let my guard down. I tried to sleep, but I couldn't. Every shadow in my small apartment seemed sharper. Every creak in the pipes felt deliberate. The wind rattled the windows in patterns that sounded like soft whispers. The next night, the phone rang again. I knew before I even picked it up. The static, that breathy hiss, was unmistakable. "Hello?" I said. "Please," the voice whispered. "Help!" And then it was gone. Just static again. I pressed the redial button, hoping, praying I could hold on to it long enough to make sense of it. Nothing. Dead air. By the third night, I could feel myself unraveling. My coworkers noticed. I laughed too loudly at nothing, mumbled to myself between calls, and sometimes caught myself staring at the phone like it might start talking on its own. Harris called again. "We've got a team out there tonight. Cameras, everything. We want to see if the house does anything. You stay put." I wanted to. I wanted to tell him I'd stay behind the desk, safe in the hum of fluorescent lights. But when the phone rang that night, my body betrayed me. I ran to it, lifted the receiver, and braced myself. Static. Breathing. Faint sobs threading through the hiss. I could hear the fear in it now, pure and raw, like someone hanging on to life by fingernails. I tried to speak, but my throat was tight. "Stay with me," I whispered. "I can hear you." Don't go." The sound was interrupted by another noise this time. Something dragging. Something deliberate, moving closer. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might burst. And then silence. I didn't move for a long time, just holding the receiver, my ear against it, waiting for the impossible. Hours later, Harris called. Nothing. No one there. No signs of entry. The phone line, still working. The call, still nothing. "You okay?" I said I was fine, but I wasn't. By the time dawn broke, the farmhouse was empty again, and the line went dead. But I could still feel it, pulsing through the wires, a presence I couldn't explain. I started writing down everything. Every time the call came, every word I could catch, every pattern I thought I noticed. Maybe if I documented it, I could find a clue, a reason. But the more I wrote, the more I felt it slip through my fingers. The static seemed alive, twisting, carrying the voice further from me every time I thought I had it. And I began to notice something else. Every call came at night. Every call came when I was alone. And every call left me feeling hollow. The farmhouse was just the beginning. I could feel it now in my bones. Something was tied to that line. Something that didn't want to be found. Something that needed me to listen. I didn't know if I was helping or hurting, but I couldn't stop. Not anymore. Because every night when the line rang, I knew it was coming back. And every time I answered, the dead air whispered my name. I stopped sleeping altogether. It started slowly, just a few nights in a row. But soon the calls came every night, sometimes twice, sometimes more. I tried ignoring them, tried letting them ring, but the second the static hissed, my body betrayed me. My hands would reach for the phone, my mind screaming, and I couldn't stop myself. The first few nights after the farmhouse, I expected the same voice, the same sobs, the same desperate whispers. But it wasn't the same. Not entirely. "Help!" That word came again, thin, trembling. But layered beneath it was something else. Another voice, faint, high-pitched, like a child's whisper. And another, male, rough, almost laughing, but panicked. All of them overlapping, drowning in static. I wrote down the words as fast as I could. Every fragment I could catch. But it didn't make sense. Some of the voices belonged to people who were never reported missing. Names I could check online, in news reports, social media, alive, active, normal, yet the fear in their tones. It wasn't fake. It wasn't acting. It was pure terror. The lines between reality and the phone began to blur. I started hearing them when the phone wasn't even ringing. A soft whisper in the office air, a faint sob when the fluorescent lights flickered. My apartment felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by static, by voices that didn't belong anywhere. I tried to tell someone. My coworkers thought I was losing it. Harris called me once, patient but tense. "You're telling me these are live calls? From people who are alive?" "Yes," I said. I checked. Every single one. I know it sounds insane, but they're terrified. They're screaming. I don't know why. He didn't respond for a long time. "Stay on the line. Document it. Don't do anything stupid." I laughed, bitter and hollow. "What do you expect me to do, Harris? I can't just not answer." The next night, the phone rang at 1:13 a.m. I was ready this time, pen and notebook in hand, my heart hammering in my ears, static first. Hissing like a kettle left on too long. "Hello?" I said, voice trembling despite myself, and then, "Please," a man's voice, calm at first, then cracking. Help me. They're here. Another voice cut in, a woman now, terrified, yelling. Stop! Don't. A child whispered something I didn't understand, soft and broken. I tried to speak. I can hear you. Tell me where you are. Static erupted, violent and sharp, and I yelped, dropping the receiver. My ears rang, my hands shook. When I picked it up again, it was quieter, but the voices were still there, overlapping, layered, impossible to separate. I tried tracing the call again. No address. The same untraceable number, now seeming more like a portal than a line. Every time I dialed it back, I got nothing. Nothing but dead air. That impossible silence. I stopped going outside. I stopped answering texts. My coworkers stopped asking questions. The line was everything. It was life and death, hope and terror, all in one. Then I realized something. I started recognizing patterns. The calls always came when I was alone. Always after midnight. Always lasting exactly long enough for me to hear fragments before the line broke. And tonight, I could feel it waiting. The phone rang at 12:57 a.m. I didn't hesitate. I knew I couldn't. Static, breathing, sobbing. And then, why are you listening? The voice was quiet, low, almost inside my own head. My blood ran cold. I want to help, I said. My voice shook. I can help you. You can't, it whispered. None of you can. The voices overlapped, frantic, panicked, impossible to separate. And then, as I pressed my ear to the receiver, I recognized some of them. Names I'd seen online, people alive, going about their normal lives, screaming into the void on a line I could hear. Why? I asked, voice barely audible. Static, a hiss, a pause, and then one voice, distinct and low, as if it were standing behind me. Because we're already gone. I slammed the receiver down. My hands shook so violently I could barely write. But I wrote anyway. Every word, every tremor in the voice, because I knew I wouldn't sleep again. I couldn't. Days blurred into nights. I didn't eat much. I didn't leave the building. The line rang on schedule. Each time, new voices joined, layering over the old, their terror raw and piercing. I tried telling myself they were hallucinations, a trick of exhaustion. But the recordings, the logs, the timestamps, they proved it wasn't me. I even tried playing them back, listening through headphones. The horror magnified. Voices calling my name, pleading, screaming, overlapping in a chaotic chorus. Some of them whispered things I couldn't understand, in words that weren't even English, but the fear was universal, primal. I started hearing them outside the office too, on the street, in my apartment, even in my dreams. Sometimes the static came before I woke up, filling the room with hissing whispers and sobs that felt too real. I called Harris again, my voice breaking. They're alive. I know it. They're alive and they're terrified. He was quiet for a long time. We don't know how. We don't know why. Just stay on the line. Document it. Don't do anything else. But I couldn't stop myself. I had to answer. Every time it rang, I picked up. Every time I heard the fear. Every time I felt it reach into me, clawing at my sanity. One night, I tried something new. I recorded a voice back, a calm, reassuring one. You're safe. We're here. We're listening. The line went silent. Then the voices came back, but not in panic. Not yet. Just a quiet, low hum, almost like breathing together. And then one whisper, terrifying in its clarity. You're part of it now. I dropped the receiver and didn't touch it for hours. My hands were shaking, my mind racing. Part of what? I didn't understand. And yet I could feel it. Deep inside, something had changed. The next night, the calls didn't just come when I was alone. They came when I was with people. On the subway, on the street, in cafes. The static hissed in my ears, the voices bleeding through headphones, earbuds, even through the walls. And always, always the phrase, you're part of it now. I tried to leave. I tried to quit the job, move away, destroy the phones, unplug everything. But the line followed me. Wherever I went, static, whispers, sobs. Names, cries, voices that shouldn't exist, terror that shouldn't exist, all clawing at me. I stopped calling it a phone. It isn't a phone. It's a line, a thread, a conduit between worlds, or maybe just one world I can't escape from. And every time it rings, I know what I have to do. Pick it up, listen, record, document, survive, and pray that next time it doesn't decide I'm the one who isn't supposed to exist, because the voices are endless. And now, somewhere deep beneath the static, I can hear my own voice whispering back at me. Help. The line rings again. I answer. It was 3 in the morning when I saw her. I still don't know why I was driving that stretch of Highway 16 alone. Maybe I'd taken the wrong exit. Maybe I couldn't sleep. Maybe I just needed to feel something other than the hum of my own apartment. The road was dark, the kind of dark that makes your headlights feel like a small candle in a black ocean. I remember thinking the trees leaned closer than they should, their branches brushing the sky like skeletal fingers. Then, there she was, a girl. I don't know her age, maybe 16, maybe 20, but she was soaked in something dark. At first I thought it was rain, but the sky had been cleared. My stomach turned when I realized it was blood. It streaked her clothes, ran down her arms, soaked her hair. She was staggering, unsteady, like she was half asleep, or maybe too tired to know what her body was doing. I hit the brakes hard. Tires screeched. My heart felt like it had leapt into my throat. She didn't even look at me at first. She just stumbled, swaying like a toy in a washing machine. I wanted to get out, to help her, to do something. But my hands were frozen on the wheel. My eyes couldn't stop scanning her face. It was pale. So pale, it looked like she didn't belong in the world of the living, like she'd been pulled out of a nightmare and left on this highway for someone else to find. Finally, she lifted her head. Her eyes met mine. Dark, endless eyes. I don't remember blinking. I don't remember breathing. I only remember knowing she was in trouble and that I was the only person there. My voice caught in my throat as I whispered, "Oh my God!" She didn't speak. She didn't move toward me or away. She just kept walking, dragging one foot, leaving a trail of dark red across the asphalt. I wanted to stop her, to tell her I could help, but all I could do was reach for the phone. My hands shook so badly I almost dropped it. 911. I dialed 911 like my life depended on it. In a way, maybe it did. The operator answered quickly, but her calm voice made me panic even more. 911, what's your emergency? There's a girl, oh God, she's bleeding. She's on Highway 16. I think she needs help. Please, hurry. My words tumbled over each other, hot and desperate. I could hear the siren somewhere in the distance, but I couldn't tell if it was real or if my brain was inventing hope just to torture me. Ma'am, calm down. I need you to tell me exactly where you are. Highway 16? Yes. I'm at mile marker 42, I think. She's right in front of me. Please, hurry. She's covered in blood! My voice cracked. I wanted to scream, but my throat felt full of stones. Okay, help is on the way. I need you to stay in your car. Keep your distance. Can you see her clearly? I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. Yes, oh God, she's limping. Her leg, I think it's hurt. She's dragging it. She's just walking down the middle of the road. I can't get out. She's staring at me. I didn't know if I was supposed to approach her. My brain screamed yes, my gut screamed no. Her eyes, those endless black eyes, held something that didn't belong to the world. She wasn't asking for help. She was something else. Something that didn't need me. And yet I couldn't look away. I tried to get closer, inching the car forward slowly, but she didn't move aside. She didn't run. She just kept walking. The red streaks she left behind on the asphalt glistened under my headlights like wet ink. Every step she took sounded wrong, like the rhythm of her body didn't match the rhythm of a normal human. Ma'am, can you see if she's conscious? The operator's voice pulled me back. I swallowed hard. I don't know. She's breathing, I think, but she's mumbling. I can't hear what she's saying. Then she stopped, right in the middle of the lane. The sudden halt made me slam on my brakes again. My chest heaved. I wanted to reach out through the windshield, wanted to grab her hand, wanted to do anything to fix this nightmare. She turned her head slowly toward me, and I swear she smiled, or at least her mouth moved like a smile. But it didn't reach her eyes. Her eyes stayed dark, empty, hungry. Ma'am, stay on the line. Help is almost there. I nodded again. My hands gripped the wheel so tightly it hurt. The silence between us stretched like a rope, thick and suffocating. She didn't flinch as a car passed by in the other lane, headlights slicing through the night. She didn't flinch when a gust of wind blew her hair across her face. She didn't flinch at anything. Only me, only the car, only my voice. Then she moved again. Slowly, methodically, dragging her feet, her bloody footprints marking every inch of the highway. I followed her with the car, careful to keep some distance, careful not to scare her. I couldn't let her vanish. I couldn't let her disappear before help arrived. I called out her name. I don't even know why. Hey, are you okay? Can you hear me? My voice was trembling, cracking with every word. She didn't respond. She only looked at me, always at me, and then I saw the first trail into the woods. Just a hint of darkness between the trees, a break in the shadows. Her footprints stopped at the edge of it. I could see where she staggered down into the black. My chest tightened. I wanted to follow her, but the operator's voice pulled me back like a leash. Stay with me, ma'am. Keep your eyes on her. Help is almost there. They'll be at mile marker 42 in 5 minutes. Do you see them? I strained my eyes into the night. The headlights of a patrol car were flickering in the distance. My relief was immediate, but it was mixed with something else. Fear. Deep, gnawing fear. Because the girl, my bloodied, staggering, haunting girl, didn't turn to the patrol car. She didn't run toward them. She just disappeared. I swear I saw the trees shift. Shadows pooling where there shouldn't be shadows. The wind died suddenly. Everything around me seemed frozen. The only thing moving was my heart, hammering so hard I thought it might break my chest. The operator's voice came again. Ma'am, are you still there? Yes, she's gone. I think she went into the woods. The patrol car should be there any second, but the patrol car never seemed to reach her. They circled the highway, their lights cutting through the night like knives, and yet there was no sign of her. Only the dark, only the smell of wet pine and dirt, and the memory of her eyes. Those empty, endless eyes that seemed to follow me long after they had vanished. I sat there gripping the wheel, trying to convince myself I'd imagined it. Blood, shadows, a girl in trouble. Maybe a hallucination, maybe exhaustion. But my stomach knew better. My hands knew better. My voice, hoarse and trembling, knew better. The operator stayed on the line with me until the patrol finally came close enough to pick up my report. When they did, I told them everything, every detail, every trail, every step, every glance. But when they drove up to where I said she had disappeared, they found nothing. Not a girl, not blood, not footprints. Just the cold asphalt and the rustling trees. I wanted to shout. I wanted to scream at them. I wanted to tell them that she was real, that I had seen her. But all I could do was shake. My voice caught. My hands shook. The officer looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Sir, are you sure you're okay? I nodded, though I wasn't. I will never be okay. Because somewhere out there in the dark woods along Highway 16, she was still walking. Somewhere in the shadows, she was still bleeding. And I was the only one who had seen her. Even now, I can't stop seeing her. Her eyes, her blood, her slow, unrelenting steps. They haunt me every time I close my eyes. And I know, somewhere deep down, that I will see her again. I couldn't sleep after that night. Not really, not ever. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her. The bloodied girl on Highway 16. Her eyes. Her endless black eyes. I kept picturing those footprints leading into the woods, and the way the trees seemed to swallow her whole. I just knew that she hadn't vanished. She was still out there, waiting, moving, watching. When the responders arrived the next morning, I thought maybe they would finally prove it to me. Maybe they would follow the trail and find her, and I could finally stop seeing her in my nightmares. But as soon as I told them what I had seen, I realized that the real terror wasn't the girl. It was how easily the world refused to see her. I met them at the edge of the highway. Their uniforms were crisp, their radios crackling with static and muted voices. I felt a moment of relief, thinking they would understand. But the way they looked at me, I don't think I'll ever forget it. That mixture of politeness and disbelief, like I had just told them I saw a deer in a snowstorm, bleeding in rainbow colors. She disappeared into the woods, I told them, pointing. My hands were still shaking. There are footprints, drag marks. She's injured. Please, you have to look. The officer glanced at the tree line, then back at me. Sir, we're going to need more details. His voice was calm, professional. Too calm, like he could speak about the end of the world and still keep his lunch down. I swallowed hard. There, just past the mile marker. Footprints start in the road, then drag into the trees. She was hurt, bleeding. Please, you have to follow them. They took their time. Too much time. While they argued with each other over walkie-talkies, I kept my eyes on the tree line, waiting for any sign of her. A flicker of movement, a shadow, something, but there was nothing. Only silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Finally, one of them stepped into the woods. He was tall, sturdy, carrying a flashlight. I watched him swing it over the ground, lighting up leaves, dirt, branches. My stomach twisted. Every second he spent out there, I feared she would vanish again. My hands were digging into the steering wheel, nails cutting into my palms. Nothing, he called after a minute, voice echoing back. No footprints. No drag marks. No one! My chest tightened. What do you mean, no one? There was a girl. She was... My words trailed off. I couldn't finish. Because I knew they wouldn't see her. They never did. Only I saw her. Only I knew. Another responder, a woman, joined him. Together, they swept the ground, scanning the leaves and mud, the uneven earth. I followed them, leaning out of my car, pointing. Right here, there! She dragged herself through here. You have to... But they didn't. They didn't see anything. Just dirt, leaves, pine needles, no blood. No footprints, nothing. I felt my throat close. My lungs refused air. She was right here. I saw her! I shouted. My voice sounded strange even to me, high and cracked. My knuckles white around the steering wheel. She was bleeding. She was injured. They didn't respond. They didn't argue, didn't panic. Just shook their heads politely. The officer wrote something down on a pad, looking at me like I was a man who had just woken up from a bad dream. I wanted to scream. I wanted to claw at the earth, tear the trees apart until I found her. But there was nothing to claw at. No evidence. Nothing but my memory and the echo of her eyes, staring at me from the darkness. Then I noticed the drag marks, barely there. Faint depressions in the soft soil, almost invisible unless you knew what to look for. My heart leapt. I pointed again. There. See the marks? She went that way. The officers followed where I pointed. They crouched, examined, whispered to each other. But then, as if someone had wiped the world clean, the marks disappeared under their flashlights. The soil was smooth, undisturbed. Nothing, she's gone, the woman said softly. Not to me, she was speaking more to herself. There's nothing here. My stomach turned. I wanted to tell them, to explain, to shake them awake from the spell the woods had cast. But words failed me. They never understood. No one did. No one could. I remember standing there, frozen, as they packed up, muttering about a false alarm. Maybe a lost hiker. Maybe a prankster. They left, leaving the highway empty again. My headlights cut through the night like knives, and still there was nothing. Nothing but the silence of the woods, dark and unbroken, swallowing everything I thought I knew. I drove slowly that night, retracing every step I remembered, every mile, every shadow. My eyes searched for her in every patch of darkness, every bend in the road, every tree line that could hide her. But the world was empty. The way the officers had said, just empty asphalt, just empty trees, just nothing. I stopped at the same mile marker where I first saw her. My hands gripped the wheel so tightly my knuckles hurt. I could almost feel her presence. Almost. The memory of her staggering steps, her pale skin, the blood streaking her clothes, pressed against my skull like a vice. I remember the sound of the wind then. Or maybe it wasn't the wind. Maybe it was the faintest whisper, barely audible, brushing past my ear. I froze. My eyes darted to the woods. For a second, I thought I saw her, just the corner of her figure, vanishing between the trees. My heart jumped into my throat. My stomach turned. But it wasn't her. Of course it wasn't. Only the way the trees moved, or maybe my mind playing tricks. Maybe the forest was mocking me. Maybe it knew I could see her. And that was enough. That knowledge alone was punishment. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. Not after that. I sat in my car, staring at the dark tree line, feeling her there, just beyond my sight. Waiting, watching, always watching. I could sense it, like a weight pressing on my chest, a presence pressing against the glass of the windshield. Every time I blinked, I thought I saw her. Just a flicker, a shadow, a stain of red in the darkness. I kept telling myself it was my imagination. But deep down, I knew the truth. She hadn't disappeared. She was still there. Somewhere. And I wasn't the only one who would see her next. The highway was quiet then, but it was a quiet that pressed on your ears, that made your own heartbeat sound loud enough to break glass. I stayed there, breathing hard, gripping the wheel until the sun started to rise and the patrol cars left for their morning rounds. Even as the light came, I knew it didn't matter. The day would never change what I had seen. What I knew and the drag marks. Even now I can remember them. Faint, almost invisible. But there, leading into the woods, into the dark, into the place where no one goes except her. No one goes, and yet I know she's still there, watching, waiting, walking. After that night, I thought it would end. I thought seeing her once, bleeding, staggering, watching me with those endless eyes, was some kind of one-time nightmare. But I was wrong. So painfully, horribly wrong, it started with the calls. Truckers mostly, people I didn't know, on the radio channels that crisscross the highways. The first time it happened, I didn't even answer. I was at home pacing, trying to convince myself I'd imagined everything, when the dispatcher's voice came through the old CB radio I had hooked up in my apartment. Highway 16, mile marker 42. There's a girl. She's bleeding, walking. She's just walking. I froze. My stomach dropped. My hands shook. I knew those words. I knew that voice, even though I didn't know the man speaking. Because it was the same girl, the same impossibility. Over the next few weeks, the calls kept coming. Every few nights, another trucker, another panicked voice. She's in the middle of the road. Red all over her. Don't get out! The details changed a little. Sometimes her clothes, sometimes the pattern of blood. But the truth was the same. She appeared always injured, always bleeding, always vanishing when anyone got close. I started keeping track. Notes on my phone, scribbles on scraps of paper, lines connecting dates and times like some sick map of inevitability. And every time a call came in, I could feel my chest tighten before the words even reached my ears. My fingers itched to reach for the radio to warn them. But the same thought always hit first. They would never see her. No one ever did. I started listening in more carefully night after night. Sitting in the dark of my apartment, the city lights outside looking so harmless, so ordinary, while her presence crept across my consciousness like smoke. Her stories repeated themselves, always walking, always dragging her feet, always disappearing into the trees or just vanishing into the asphalt. And every time the caller sounded like he had just met death and couldn't quite believe he'd survived. One night, a driver called in from mile marker 38, young man, probably late 20s. His voice was shaking. I'm telling you, I don't know what to do. She's bleeding. Her dress, it's soaked in blood. Don't come out here! Please, don't come out here. I heard the static in his radio, the slight tremor in his breathing, the way his words stumbled over themselves. My own chest hurt listening to him, because I knew exactly what he was seeing. And I knew exactly what would happen next. Another night, a trucker reported seeing her sitting on the guardrail, just sitting, legs dangling, head tilted, blood running down her arms. And when the dispatcher told him help was on the way, he swore he watched her vanish. Not run, not hide, just vanish, like smoke into nothing. I started marking the days. Friday, Tuesday, Sunday. The pattern made no sense, yet it felt deliberate. She wasn't random. She wasn't chaos. She was patient, watching the world move around her while she remained just out of reach, a permanent stain of dread in the human eye. And every call, every story, every terrified driver, it pulled me deeper into her orbit. I started sleeping less, driving more. I couldn't stop thinking about her, couldn't stop imagining those black eyes following me through the dark. I dreamed of her sometimes, but even dreams couldn't hold her correctly. She always looked different, more ethereal, more broken, but still unmistakable. One morning after a particularly bad night, I found myself on Highway 16, not as a driver, not as someone called by a dispatcher. I was walking the mile markers, scanning the tree line, searching every shadow. The sun was low, orange and fading, but the highway still felt wrong, like it belonged to some other world I had never known. I found footprints, old ones faint, dragging into the woods. They weren't fresh. but they were enough to make my stomach clench. I traced them carefully, but they ended abruptly at the edge of the trees. Nothing more. No girl, no blood, no proof, just emptiness, and the knowledge that she had been here and would come again. Then there were the rumors. Truckers talking in hushed tones at diners, motels, stories of the same girl, spotted at night, disappearing when someone tried to help. Some said she was an accident victim. Others whispered that she was a ghost. But no one had ever stopped her. No one had ever touched her. No one had ever brought her home. And every time someone mentioned her, I felt a flicker of recognition, like a memory stretched across the night. My own voice would whisper her name in my sleep. My dreams twisted around her image. The girl wasn't just appearing on the highway anymore. She was invading my life, my thoughts, my waking hours. I remember one call vividly. A trucker from the northbound lane, frantic. "She's standing on the shoulder. Just standing! Blood everywhere!" His voice was desperate, shaking. I could hear his eyes scanning, his hands gripping the wheel so tightly he was probably leaving scratches in the paint. And then he said it. She's looking right at me. Right at me! That phrase stopped me cold. Because I knew what it meant. The way she looked at someone. It wasn't curiosity, it wasn't fear. It was recognition, and maybe something worse. Judgment, hunger, patience. Every time the dispatcher tried to reassure the drivers, to tell them help was on the way, it was the same story. They'd arrive, lights cutting through the dark, and she would vanish. Always vanish. And the drivers would call back later, shaken, questioning their own eyes, wondering if they'd imagined it. But I knew the truth. I had seen it. She didn't run. She didn't hide. She disappeared. And somehow she always came back. I started keeping a list. Names, dates, times, the mile markers, the descriptions, every single sighting. It was obsessive. I knew it. I didn't care. I had to know. I had to understand. Because it wasn't enough to see her once. I needed to see her again, to understand her, to survive her. And then one night it happened. A call from a trucker who stayed on the line longer than usual. His voice quiet, cautious, trembling. I could hear him gripping something in the cab. Maybe the steering wheel. Maybe himself. And then he whispered it. "She's in the cab with me." I froze. My blood ran cold. My stomach twisted. Every hair on my body stood on end. I tried to speak into the radio, tried to tell him to stay calm, tried to do anything. But my voice caught, because I knew the end of this story. I had seen the signs too many times to doubt it. The dispatcher stayed quiet for a long moment, listening. Too long. And then the line went dead. I can still hear it in my head, that silence, that final crushing absence, like someone had reached into the world and pulled the life out of it. After that night, I stopped answering calls. I stopped listening. I tried to sleep. I tried to pretend it was over. But I know it isn't. I know she's still out there, walking the highway, bleeding, waiting, watching, and I know that one day the line will ring again. Another trucker, another sighting, and maybe next time she won't vanish, because she's learning. She's always learning. And eventually, she will not need the darkness to hide in. It started like any other night. I was listening to the radio, half asleep, half hoping I wouldn't hear anything. But deep down I knew I would. Highway 16 had a way of dragging its shadows into your life, and I had learned, too late, that once you saw her, you never truly escaped. The dispatcher's voice came over the line, tired but steady. Highway 16, mile marker 46. Truckers reporting a girl bleeding. Same as before. "Stay on the line," I froze. That voice, the calm, professional tone, was a leash, pulling me back into the darkness I'd tried to leave behind. My stomach nodded. My hands tightened around the radio as if I could hold the world together by gripping that little device. The caller, a trucker, sounded shaken, young, maybe in his 20s, but his voice carried the raw panic of someone who had stared into something no one was meant to see. She's standing by the guardrail, blood all over her. I don't know what to do. Please, someone help me. I listened, heart hammering, sweat prickling my palms. I knew that voice. Not personally, but I knew the fear behind it. I'd felt it. I'd lived it, and I knew what would happen next. The dispatcher's calm voice tried to guide him. "Stay in your cab. Keep driving slowly. Don't get out. Help is on the way." The trucker's voice cracked. She's looking at me. Right at me, her eyes. Oh God, her eyes. I gritted my teeth, trying to steady myself. I knew those eyes. Black, endless, impossible. Eyes that saw through you, past you, into something you weren't ready to confront. Minutes stretched. The trucker spoke softly now, almost whispering. She just got in. She's in the passenger seat. I didn't open the door. She just appeared. I felt my stomach drop. My pulse went cold. The radio line seemed to shrink, the room around me tightening like a coffin. The words replayed in my mind. In the passenger seat. Not standing by the guardrail. Not staggering along the road. In his cab. Watching him. Stay calm, the dispatcher said. But his voice sounded small now, fragile, like it might shatter if he spoke too loudly. Stay calm. You're still safe. Don't. I can feel her, the trucker whispered, voice trembling, almost inaudible. She's breathing. I can hear her breathing. Oh God. I can hear her breathing. She's smiling at me. I leaned forward, gripping the radio. My own breathing was loud in my ears. I wanted to reach through the static, to grab him by the shoulders and shake him awake. But I knew it was too late. I had known it the moment she had appeared beside him. The trucker's words slowed, stretched thin. She knows. She knows me. She wants me. She's not supposed to be here. But she is. Oh God. The line went silent for a long, unbearable moment. Then the static crackled. I thought he might speak again, but nothing came. And then, dead. The radio line went completely dead. No static, no voice, no sound at all. Just an absence that pressed against my ears and rattled my chest. I stared at the device, shaking, unable to move, unable to breathe. The world seemed to tilt. The walls of my apartment, the darkness outside my window, even my own body. All of it felt wrong, unnatural, hollow. I couldn't stop thinking about him. The trucker, alone on Highway 16 with that girl in the cab beside him. I imagined her there, pale and bleeding, staring, smiling, waiting. She didn't need the shadows now. She didn't need the trees or the asphalt to hide her. She was inside. Inside the cab. Inside the body of anyone unlucky enough to see her. I tried to tell myself it was just another report, another story. But I knew it wasn't. I knew her. I had seen her. And I knew she could be anywhere. In anyone's vehicle, waiting silently until the world caught up. I thought about the first time I saw her. The blood, the staggering steps, the hollow eyes. That moment when she had looked at me and I had known I would never forget. She had waited just like this, biding her time, choosing the right moments, the right people. And I had learned too late. She always chooses. She always comes back. After that, I couldn't listen to Highway 16 anymore. I avoided it entirely, refused to answer any calls. But even in my apartment, even in the bright light of day, I felt her. Shadows moving at the corner of my vision. A faint wet smell in the air. The sense of being watched. Always watched. I started checking every vehicle I passed on the road. Every truck, every cab, every car. The paranoia made me nauseous, but I couldn't stop. What if she was already there? What if the next call I heard over the radio wasn't just another driver, but the girl herself, already inside someone else's cab? Sleep became impossible. The memory of the trucker, his voice fading into nothing, haunted me. I imagined him turning his head slowly, realizing she was beside him, and the horror that would follow. And I knew that sound, the sound of the line going dead, would follow me too, forever. That final silence, more terrifying than any scream. I've driven Highway 16 once since then, at night, alone. I thought maybe I could face her, maybe I could finally see her again and understand. But the road was empty, quiet, too quiet. The trees leaned close like they always did, shadows pooling unnaturally. And I realized the truth. She doesn't follow patterns anymore. She doesn't wait for me. She waits for anyone. Anyone at all. And the next trucker, the next driver, could be the one she chooses. Sometimes I think I can still hear her. Not in the real world. Not literally. But in the dark corners of my mind when the world is quiet, I hear her breathing, and I know she's smiling, waiting, watching, always watching. The trucker's voice, the final call, haunts me. That desperate, trembling whisper, she's in the passenger seat. And now I know there is no safety. There is no distance. She doesn't vanish, not really. She just waits. Until you notice, and then she's there. I answer the phone on a Tuesday night. The kind of night where the air feels heavier than it should, and the house is quiet in a way that presses against your chest. My thumb hovers over the screen for a moment because it's late, and I wasn't expecting anyone. But the screen says 911. I press answer, and a thin, trembling voice cuts through the line. "Hello?" I say, trying to keep it steady. The voice is a whisper, soft but urgent. "Please, someone's in the house." I freeze. My mind races. I work in dispatch. I've heard scared kids before, but this voice, it isn't like any other. It's small, shivering, almost desperate. "Who's there?" I ask. The whisper swallows itself. "In the basement." "They're in the basement. Don't open the door." The line goes quiet. I feel a chill run down my spine. Dispatch training tells you to ask questions, to stay calm, to get information. But instinct claws at me. Something is off. Something is wrong in the way the voice trembles, in the pause that fills the silence between us. "Okay," I say, trying to steady my own voice. "What's your name? Are you hurt?" There's a long pause, just heavy breathing and soft shuffling. Then I can't tell you, please don't let them find me. I grip the phone tighter. My chair creaks. The room around me suddenly too loud, too bright. I can hear my own pulse in my ears, a rhythm too fast for comfort. "Listen, we're going to help you," I whisper, more to myself than to them. "I need to know where you are." I'm at home," the child says. "But it's not safe. They're waiting. In the basement." I can hear the panic rising in their voice, a tremor that makes me shiver. It's the kind of fear that feels alive, crawling under your skin, wrapping around your throat. Stay on the line. Stay calm, I tell them. My training fights with the knot in my stomach. "Is anyone else in the house?" The whisper is almost a sob now. I don't know. I think they're watching. "Please, don't open the door." I pause. The words hang in the air like smoke. "Don't open the door." My heart skips, a cruel rhythm. "Okay," I say carefully. "I'm going to keep talking to you. Don't move. Can you hide somewhere safe?" Yes. "I'm under the stairs. Please hurry." I grab the radio, trying to stay calm. My hands are shaking. My voice cracks slightly when I talk into the mic. "We have a child in distress, hiding under the stairs. Possible intruder in the basement. I need units dispatched immediately." The whisper cuts in again, barely audible. "They know I called?" "I think they know." I freeze. My stomach drops. The voice doesn't just fear someone in the house. It fears being heard, being found. And suddenly every creak of my own house, every shadow in the corner of my room feels wrong. "Stay quiet," I whisper. "They're on their way." The line goes quiet again. Then a sound, faint, almost imperceptible, like footsteps on bare concrete. The whisper comes back, trembling. I can hear them coming down. I grip the phone so hard it hurts. "Stay hidden. Don't make a sound." The voice whimpers, a sound that should not exist outside nightmares. "They're at the door. Please don't." I can't move. My mouth is dry. My chair feels too heavy, too small. The words, the fear, the helplessness, they cling to me like a second skin. "Wevan, what's happening?" A coworker's voice crackles over the radio. I swallow hard. "They're in the basement. A child is hiding. Please hurry." The whisper rises into a panic. I can see the door. It's moving. I can almost picture it. The dark wood, the cold metal handle turning slowly, deliberately. The fear in the voice twists into something sharper, more raw, like a scream trapped behind glass. "I need you to stay calm," I say, trying to ground both of us. "I'm not opening anything. Just stay quiet. Stay hidden." The sound of the door clicking against the frame, the slow scrape of it moving against the floorboards, makes me flinch. My pulse is a hammer in my ears. They're coming for me," the child whispers. "Stay quiet," I repeat. My own voice is almost a tremor now. "Don't let them find you." I can hear faint breathing, heavy and uneven, like someone or something, is just beyond the threshold. The seconds stretch and twist, each one longer than the last, a living thing that presses into my chest. Then, suddenly, the line goes dead. I sit frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear. My heart hammers, my brain racing through every protocol, every possible nightmare. I call back. No answer. Just a ringing tone, empty and cold. I radio dispatch again, urgency cutting into my words. We need units now. The child was under the stairs. Possible intruder in the basement. My fingers shake as I jot down every detail, every word I remember. My stomach twists, a mix of dread and helplessness. I replay the call in my head, the terrified whispers, the warnings. Don't open the door. Don't open the door. Minutes drag by. My coworkers are on it, radio's buzzing, updates coming in. I try to stay in the moment, but my mind races. What if they don't make it in time? What if the child was alone, screaming silently while we scrambled? I think of my own home, the way the dark corners feel like eyes, the quiet hum of the fridge turning into some low, threatening growl. I feel the line between safety and terror blur. The phone in my hand is both a lifeline and a reminder of how powerless I am when the shadows move faster than I can react. Then a faint sound on the line. I nearly dropped the phone. Hello? I whisper, barely daring to breathe. A small, trembling voice comes back. I'm still here. Please, help. I hold the line tight, my whole body trembling. I'm right here. I won't leave you. Don't move. Just stay hidden. Don't open the door. The voice whispers again, barely audible. The sound of sirens in the distance finally cuts through the suffocating quiet. Relief and dread mix in a sharp, almost painful taste. I can hear units moving, doors opening, radios calling coordinates, but the fear hasn't left. The voice, small and fragile, is still in my head. I keep the phone pressed to my ear, listening to the fading whispers, counting the steps until help arrives. Counting the seconds until the basement door is forced open, until we finally see what was hiding in the dark. And even when the house is finally cleared and the sirens fade into the night, the whisper lingers. Don't open the door. Don't open the door. I know that voice will stay with me, echoing in my own house, in the quiet moments before sleep, in the shadows behind closed doors. A child who may never have been found, warning me, warning anyone, that some doors are meant to stay closed. The sirens faded slowly, leaving a ringing silence that felt heavier than any noise. My hands were still gripping the phone, knuckles white, even though the call was over. Dispatch was buzzing, other units checking in, but something didn't feel right. That whisper, the child's voice, was still in my head, a thin thread pulling at the corners of my mind. I followed the updates over the radio. Units had arrived at the address the caller had given. The officers' voices were tense, clipped, professional, but I could hear it, the undercurrent of unease, the way they paused longer than they should have when entering rooms. Clear on the first floor, one officer reported. No signs of forced entry. I swallowed hard. My stomach dropped. No signs of forced entry. That didn't make sense. Check the basement, another voice said. Moving in. The radio went quiet for a moment. Then, static, a shuffling sound, and an officer's voice, strained. It's empty. No one here, nothing. I froze. My heart pounded in my chest. What do you mean empty? I muttered to myself, though the radio kept me tethered to the scene. Another officer's voice came over. Ma'am, are you still on the line? Yes, I said, my own voice trembling. We had a child hiding under the stairs. They said someone was in the basement. They called 911. There was a long pause. A radio click, static. Then one officer said, flat, almost hollow, Ma'am, the house has been abandoned for years. No electricity, no utilities. Looks like no one's lived here in a long time. I couldn't breathe. My fingers shook as I gripped the receiver. Abandoned? That didn't make sense. Not the child, not the voice, not the fear. I don't understand, I whispered. The voice, it was real. It was just a child hiding. You don't understand. They were scared. The static crackled again. We checked everything. Basements, closets, under stairs. No one. Nothing. The house has been empty for at least 5 years. The world tilted. My heart raced, my stomach knotted, and a cold sweat crept down my back. I remembered the whispers, the pleading, the tiny voice trembling against the darkness. The fear, the way it had sounded so real. I pressed the phone closer. Still, they were on the line. You can hear them, crying, asking for help. And then I heard it, a faint sob breaking through the static, soft and childlike. My fingers froze on the receiver. It wasn't on the radio. It was in the line itself. The same trembling voice whispering, "Please, don't leave me." I choked back a sob. My co-workers murmured behind me, asking if I was okay, but I couldn't answer. I couldn't move. That voice, it was still there, listening, waiting, even though no one was supposed to be. The units reported back slowly. "Ma'am, we've swept the house. There's nothing." No one, but the voice didn't care. It whispered again, closer now, desperate. "They're coming. Please." I gripped the phone so tight my nails dug into my palms. "Where are you?" I whispered. My voice cracked. "Where are you?" "I'll find you!" The line went silent. I thought of the house, the abandoned structure the officers described. Empty, derelict, forgotten, and yet the voice had been inside it, had called me from it. Had I been speaking to nothing? A radio crackle broke the silence. One of the officers reported, "We found a phone in the basement." Same number as the call came from. Battery dead, no child. No sign of anyone. I pressed my forehead to the desk. My mind screamed, trying to reconcile what I'd heard with what they were telling me. The voice had been real. It had been real. But the house had been wrong. And yet, it wasn't just the house. I could still hear the child on the line, faint but clear. Every time I adjusted the phone, it whispered again. Small, fragile, desperate. "Help me. Please." The words weren't in any language of reason. They were just fear, raw and twisting. And no matter how many times I tried to tell myself it was a glitch, a trick, a prank, it pressed into me. Like it had never left the line, like it was trapped in the static, waiting for someone to answer again. I walked to the window of the dispatch office. The street outside was empty. Dim street lights flickered, shadows stretching like fingers across cracked pavement. The kind of night that feels like it's breathing, alive in a way that shouldn't exist. I thought about the child hiding under the stairs, the basement door, the soft scrape of it against the floorboards, the fear that had climbed into my ears like smoke. And now, nothing. A house empty for years. A voice trapped in a dead line. "Well, what's your status?" my supervisor asked. I swallowed, my throat tight. "The house, it's abandoned. No one's there, but the child is still on the line." There was a pause, a low murmur, and then a click. Static. And then the whisper again, so close I could feel it brushing against my mind. "Don't. Open the door." I froze, my fingers shaking. I could feel my pulse thudding in my ears. The command wasn't new, it was the same words I'd heard before. But this time it wasn't just a warning. It was demanding. The line hummed, almost alive, as if the voice itself was growing impatient, calling me into the shadows. The whisper stayed, faint but insistent, a small, trembling thread winding around my mind. "Please, help me." I realized then that some calls don't end. Some voices don't stop. They linger in the static, in the silence, in the spaces between reason and fear. And when I finally forced myself to lift the receiver from my ear, the whisper stayed with me. In my car on the drive home, in the empty rooms of my apartment, in the soft hum of the streetlights outside. "Don't open the door. Don't open the door. I know I won't. Not ever. Because some doors aren't meant to be opened, and some voices aren't meant to be found. But they wait. Always, even now. I can hear the faintest echo of a child's sob, calling across time and space, still trapped somewhere, still hiding, still waiting for someone, anyone, to answer. The sirens faded slowly, leaving a ringing silence that felt heavier than any noise. My hands were still gripping the phone, knuckles white, even though the call was over. Dispatch was buzzing, other units checking in, but something didn't feel right. That whisper, the child's voice, was still in my head, a thin thread pulling at the corners of my mind. I followed the updates over the radio. Units had arrived at the address the caller had given. The officers' voices were tense, clipped, professional, but I could hear it, the undercurrent of unease. The way they paused longer than they should have when entering rooms. "Clear on the first floor," one officer reported. "No signs of forced entry." I swallowed hard. My stomach dropped. No signs of forced entry. That didn't make sense. "Check the basement," another voice said. "Moving in." The radio went quiet for a moment. Then, static, a shuffling sound, and an officer's voice, strained. "It's empty. No one here. Nothing." I froze. My heart pounded in my chest. "What do you mean empty?" I muttered to myself, though the radio kept me tethered to the scene. Another officer's voice came over. "Ma'am, are you still on the line?" "Yes," I said, my own voice trembling. "We had a child hiding under the stairs. They said someone was in the basement. They called 911. There was a long pause. A radio clicked, static. Then one officer said, flat, almost hollow, "Ma'am, the house has been abandoned for years. No electricity, no utilities. Looks like no one's lived here in a long time." I couldn't breathe. My fingers shook as I gripped the receiver. Abandoned? That didn't make sense. Not the child, not the voice, not the fear. I don't understand," I whispered. "The voice." It was real. It was just a child hiding. "You don't understand. They were scared." The static crackled again. We checked everything. Basements, closets, under stairs. No one. Nothing. The house has been empty for at least 5 years. The world tilted. My heart raced. My stomach knotted, and a cold sweat crept down my back. I remembered the whispers, the pleading, the tiny voice trembling against the darkness. The fear. The way it had sounded so real. I pressed the phone closer. Still, they were on the line. You can hear them, crying, asking for help. And then I heard it, a faint sob breaking through the static, soft and childlike. My fingers froze on the receiver. It wasn't on the radio, it was in the line itself. The same trembling voice whispering, "Please, don't leave me." I choked back a sob. My coworkers murmured behind me, asking if I was okay, but I couldn't answer. I couldn't move. That voice. It was still there. Listening, waiting. Even though no one was supposed to be, the units reported back slowly. "Ma'am, we've swept the house." There's nothing. No one. But the voice didn't care. It whispered again, closer now, desperate. "They're coming. Please." I gripped the phone so tight my nails dug into my palms. "Where are you?" I whispered. My voice cracked. "Where are you? I'll find you." The line went silent. I thought of the house, the abandoned structure the officers described. Empty, derelict, forgotten. And yet the voice had been inside it, had called me from it. Had I been speaking to nothing? A radio crackle broke the silence. One of the officers reported, "We found a phone in the basement. Same number as the call came from. Battery dead. No child. No sign of anyone." I pressed my forehead to the desk. My mind screamed, trying to reconcile what I'd heard with what they were telling me. The voice had been real. It had been real. But the house. The house had been wrong, and yet it wasn't just the house. I could still hear the child on the line, faint but clear. Every time I adjusted the phone, it whispered again, small, fragile, desperate. "Help me, please." The words weren't in any language of reason. They were just fear, raw and twisting. And no matter how many times I tried to tell myself it was a glitch, a trick, a prank, it pressed into me. Like it had never left the line, like it was trapped in the static, waiting for someone to answer again. I walked to the window of the dispatch office. The street outside was empty. Dim streetlights flickered, shadows stretching like fingers across cracked pavement. The kind of night that feels like it's breathing, alive in a way that shouldn't exist. I thought about the child hiding under the stairs. The basement door, the soft scrape of it against the floorboards, the fear that had climbed into my ears like smoke. And now, nothing. A house empty for years. A voice trapped in a deadline. "Wevin, what's your status?" my supervisor asked. I swallowed, my throat tight. "The house, it's abandoned. No one's there, but the child is still on the line." There was a pause, a low murmur, and then a click. static. And then the whisper again, so close I could feel it brushing against my mind. "Don't open the door." I froze, my fingers shaking. I could feel my pulse thudding in my ears. The command wasn't new. It was the same words I'd heard before, but this time, it wasn't just a warning. It was demanding. The line hummed, almost alive, as if the voice itself was growing impatient, calling me into the shadows. I wanted to hang up. I wanted to run, to step away from the phone, to pretend it hadn't happened. But my curiosity, my dread, my need to know what was real and what wasn't kept me there. Who is this?" I whispered into the line, my voice cracking. Silence. Then a soft sniffle. "And finally, they're in the house, waiting for someone to open the door." My stomach turned. My skin crawled. They, the ones the child had feared, were waiting, but there was no house, no basement, no child. Only the line, only the voice, only the impossible. The radio buzzed again. Units were packing up. The scene was cleared. But I couldn't leave. I couldn't move. The whisper stayed, faint but insistent, a small, trembling thread winding around my mind. "Please, help me." I realized then that some calls don't end. Some voices don't stop. They linger in the static, in the silence, in the spaces between reason and fear. And when I finally forced myself to lift the receiver from my ear, the whisper stayed with me. In my car on the drive home, in the empty rooms of my apartment, in the soft hum of the streetlights outside. "Don't open the door. Don't open the door. I know I won't. Not ever. Because some doors aren't meant to be opened, and some voices aren't meant to be found. But they wait. Always, even now. I can hear the faintest echo of a child's sob, calling across time and space, still trapped somewhere, still hiding, still waiting for someone, anyone, to answer. The phone rang at 3 in the morning, sharp and insistent, dragging me out of a restless sleep. I blinked at the screen, saw the 911 label, and swallowed hard. Nights like this always felt heavier, like the air in the room could press against your chest if you breathed wrong. I answered. "Salmon, what's your emergency?" My voice was steady, trained, but my fingers twitched. There was a pause. Then a sound, distorted, wet, like someone speaking through a thick layer of water. I froze. "Hello? Can you hear me?" I asked, trying to mask the unease crawling up my spine. A voice answered, muffled, gurgling but human. Tiny, trembling, begging, "Please, help! I can't breathe!" My heart leapt. The way it sounded, trapped, desperate, it wasn't just fear. It was something else, something deeper, like someone sinking and calling from the bottom of a pool. My pulse raced as I gripped the phone tighter. "Where are you?" I whispered, even though the sound felt foolish, swallowed by the watery distortion. I'm under water!" The voice struggled. Words bubbled through, breaking, uneven. "Please, someone, help me." The line bubbled again and my stomach twisted. It sounded like drowning. I've handled panic calls before, people stuck, people frightened, but this was different. This was the sound of someone being swallowed alive by the silence. "Stay with me. Talk to me," I said. My fingers clenched the receiver. "I'm here. I'm not leaving. I'll help you. I can't move." The words were fractured, slow, heavy. I felt the fear rising in my chest, suffocating in its own way. I could hear nothing else. No breathing, no background noise, just that muffled, desperate plea. "Keep trying to talk to me," I urged. "Can you tell me where you are?" Another gurgle. The voice came back, trembling. "Lake. Car. Gone. Please, help!" I froze. "A car? What do you mean?" My stomach dropped. The images hit instantly. Metal twisted, water dark, someone trapped inside. "They trapped. Please!" The voice gurgled, muffled, like it was leaking through the line from somewhere deep, unseen. I grabbed the radio, calling for units in my sector. My own words sounded tight, hurried. Possible water-related emergency. Caller trapped. Maybe underwater. Send units immediately. The line bubbled again. I can't feel The air. I swallowed. My throat was dry. I could feel the panic that had been rising in my chest, clawing at my ribs, trying to push me into action I couldn't take yet. I had to hold it together to guide this voice. Focus on my voice, I said, even as my hands shook. Breathe slowly if you can. Can you move at all? A gurgle and then a whisper, barely human. Water. Cold. Dark. Please. I shut my eyes, tried to picture it. The panic, the fear, the sinking sensation. I've trained myself to compartmentalize, to think logically, to act in chaos. But hearing it like this, like it was pressed directly into my skull, made every instinct scream. Stay calm, I said, though the words were shaky. We're sending help. Don't let go. Don't stop trying to speak to me. The line went quiet for a moment. And then, a new sound. A metallic splash, faint, echoing in the distorted voice. My stomach dropped further. Can you hear it? The whisper came, almost pleading. Water. Everywhere. I felt my breath hitch. I could almost picture it. The car, submerged, twisting slowly beneath the surface, the faint light above dancing on the water, the muffled cries trapped in the steel and glass. And this voice, somewhere inside, reaching out. Help is coming, I said, repeating it to steady my own voice as much as to guide the caller. Stay with me. Tell me anything you can. Keep talking. The gurgling voice whispered back, broken and fading. I can hear you, please. I grabbed a notepad, jotting down every syllable, every fragmented plea. The address, if there was one, escaped me. It was as if the line existed outside the normal rules of time and space, like I was listening to a memory pressed underwater. Units radioed back, asking for clarification. I tried to explain what I could. Caller says they're in a submerged vehicle. Sounds like a lake. Caller is trapped, can barely speak. The voice, it sounds underwater, muffled, drowning. I could hear my own voice trembling. My hands were wet with sweat. I pressed the phone closer. Can you move your hands, feet? I asked softly, almost afraid the sound of my own words would scare them away. Legs. Stuck. Can't breathe. The words cracked something inside me. I could feel the panic reaching through the line, the cold pressure of water pressing into my chest, stealing the air. I could see the glass, the water rushing over the windows, the distorted light above. I could almost feel the metal pressing in on all sides, a coffin of water and steel. Stay with me, I said. I'm right here. I'm not leaving. We've traced your call. We're sending help. Stay awake. Keep talking. Can you tell me the lake? The line bubbled again. Lake, cold water. Please, I repeated the words into the radio. Lake cold water units. Immediate response. Vehicle submerged. Caller trapped inside. Another muffled gurgle. Please, hurry. Time stretched, each second thicker than the last. I couldn't see them, couldn't touch them, but I could hear them. Their fear, the cold, the dark water pressing down, the muffled cries that had to fight through layers of steel and water to reach me. I remembered my own brother, long ago when we were kids almost drowned in a river. The fear of being underwater, the sharp panic, the desperate need for air, it all came rushing back. And now, decades later, I was listening to it in a voice so small, so fragile, I could feel the echo in my chest. The radio crackled again. Units were mobilizing, water rescue teams dispatched, coordinates being confirmed. I pressed the phone closer, trying to hold on, trying to keep the caller tethered to reality. I hear you, I whispered. I'm not leaving. Stay awake. Keep breathing. Can you see anything inside the car? Nothing. Dark. Can't. Open. The words barely came through, swallowed by static and water. Please don't. Let go. I swallowed hard. My throat felt tight, my chest heavy. My mind raced through rescue protocols, survival chances, the worst possibilities. And still I stayed on the line, because that voice, so raw, so alive in its terror, needed someone to anchor them. I could hear every breath, every struggle, every muffled word, like listening to someone trapped beneath the ice. My own pulse was a drum in my ears, a reminder that I was above water, that I could still do something. But all I could do in that moment was listen, hold the line, repeat instructions, keep them alive and sound if not in sight. Stay awake, I said again, my own voice breaking. Keep talking to me. Don't go under. Units are coming! Another gurgle, muffled but urgent. See? Lights. Maybe. Please. Hurry. I nodded to myself, even though the caller couldn't see me. My fingers gripped the phone so tightly it hurt. The metallic smell of panic. The cold pressure of imagined water pressed in. And then, a final whisper before the line went eerily silent. Don't. Leave me. I sat there, phone in hand, staring at the dark screen. My pulse hammered in my ears. I could hear nothing except my own breathing. But the image was there. The submerged car, the trapped figure, the water pressing down, muffling cries and swallowing air. I traced the call's location on the computer, units heading toward the coordinates. But all I could hear in my mind, in the cold silence of the early morning, was that voice, that small drowned plea echoing across wires, as if it had passed through water, metal, and fear just to reach me. And I couldn't stop hearing it. The coordinates led us to Lake Coldwater. But even as we drove, a strange heaviness pressed down on me. The road was narrow, flanked by dark pines that swayed without wind, shadows bending like they were watching. My stomach twisted with a sense I couldn't explain, like the lake itself knew we were coming. When we arrived, the water stretched dark and flat, a black mirror under the moonlight. The air smelled of damp earth, rot, and something colder, something that belonged to the depths. I could see the rescue teams unloading gear, flashlights cutting weak beams across the surface, but my eyes kept going back to the water. Calm, empty, silent. But I knew it wasn't. The car. The drowned car. Weeks had passed since the accident, but I could still hear the voice in my head, the gurgling, pleading underwater words. And now, standing at the shore, I felt the weight of it like a cold hand on my shoulder. Units moved into the lake, boats gliding across the surface. Divers suited up. I followed the operation, my phone clutched to my chest, as if the voice might still call again. The thought made my hands shake. We found the spot quickly. Ripples betrayed the hidden shape beneath the black water. Divers slipped in, bubbles trailing like tiny ghosts. And then I saw it, metal twisted and dark, the roof of a car just below the surface. The water lapped against it, indifferent. I swallowed hard. My fingers gripped the phone tighter. The voice that had called me weeks ago, or had it only been days, echoed in my mind, muffled, trembling. Please! Help! Can't! Breathe! A diver surfaced, shaking his head. No one was alive. Weeks underwater had done what water always does, claimed them, dragged them into silence. I couldn't look away. I thought of the small, pleading voice. Had it been a memory, a ghost? A fragment trapped in the lines of the phone? My chest tightened as I realized the horror. The voice hadn't been calling from above water. It had been calling from beneath it. I stepped closer to the edge, feeling the cold air press against my face. My reflection in the lake rippled and warped. It looked wrong, like someone else was staring back, wet, gasping, trapped. My stomach lurched. I took a step back. Another diver surfaced with the second car door open. No one inside. The seats were waterlogged, clothing scattered, debris floating in slow motion. The smell of decay drifted faintly in the night, and then I heard it, faintly, almost imperceptible, like a bubble breaking underwater. Don't. Leave me! I froze. My hands were numb. My voice caught in my throat. The units didn't hear it. No one did. But I knew. I knew that voice, remembered the gurgling desperation, the pleading, the fear pressed through wires and water alike. I closed my eyes. My mind tried to rationalize it. The child, the victims, the drowned. Logic said it was impossible. But impossible didn't explain the weight, the sound, the cold, the way my chest ached with recognition. I followed the divers as they searched, noting how the vehicles had ended up in the lake. The road had curved sharply, the edge crumbling. The accident had been sudden, violent, leaving no survivors. Yet the voice remained in my head, under the static of the phone, trapped somewhere between the drowned car and me. I remembered the first call, the way the words had bubbled through the receiver, the way the panic had seeped into me. Now I understood. It wasn't just a call for help. It was a record, a recording of fear that had never faded. Weeks, months, maybe years underwater had not silenced it. One of the divers surfaced again, holding a child's small, waterlogged backpack. The straps were twisted, soaked, but intact. I reached for it, my hands shaking, but the diver held it up. "Nothing alive," he said. His voice was low, tense. "Weeks underwater." Too late. I nodded, but I couldn't look away. My mind played the call over and over, each gurgle, each muffled plea, each whisper that sounded like it had come from the bottom of the lake itself. And then I heard it clearly, unmistakable, though faint as if coming through layers of water. "Help me!" My stomach flipped. I looked around. No one else reacted. The lake was calm. The moon reflected off it like a cold mirror. But the voice was there, desperate, small, still trapped. I could feel it pressing up through the water, searching for someone, anyone, to answer. I swallowed hard. The teams packed up. The dive was over. There was nothing left to do but record the evidence and report the bodies. Yet I couldn't leave. I couldn't stop hearing it, couldn't stop feeling it. I thought of the victims, trapped in the cold black water, their mouths opening and closing in silent screams. Voices somehow carried across weeks, across the water, into my ears. The chill followed me as I drove home. My hands gripped the wheel, knuckles white. Streetlights flickered across the windshield. I tried to convince myself it was over, but the voice was still there. A memory, a recording, a ghost? It didn't matter. I knew it was real in the only way that mattered. I could hear it. Back at dispatch, I stared at the line. The phone remained silent, dead in my hands, but I couldn't stop thinking about it. The sound of someone trapped underwater, the panic pressed through wires, the pleading that had somehow made it all the way into my mind. And I realized then, slowly, with a tightening in my chest, that the lake didn't let go. It never did. The car had been claimed, the victims had been claimed. But the voice was still there, trapped, pressed into the lines, pressed into me. Waiting. The anniversary of the accident would come. I knew it. Weeks from now, months from now. The call would return, muffled, desperate, as though the victims were still underwater, still trying to reach someone who could hear them. I could feel it now. In the quiet, when the phone was still, when the wind pressed against the windows, the voice bubbled faintly through my memory, whispering, pleading, "Don't leave me." I couldn't. I wouldn't. I had traced the call. I had seen the lake. I had counted the dead. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty: the water doesn't forget, and the line doesn't let go. And every year, the call would come back. It started again a year later. I was sitting at my desk, the night shift dragging, my coffee cold in my hand when the phone rang. I didn't even check the screen. Instinct told me it was the same line, the same haunting rhythm that had haunted my dreams ever since Lake Coldwater. "When? What's your emergency?" I answered, my voice steady, but my hands were shaking. Then it came. The voice. Muffled, gurgling, unmistakable. "Please, can't breathe." I froze. My chest tightened. The memory of the lake, the submerged car, the divers surfacing with nothing but silence and decay, it all came back. Every detail pressed into me, and the world seemed to tilt. "Where are you?" I whispered, my throat tight. A pause. Then, lake. "Coldwater. Please, help." My stomach dropped. I gripped the phone so hard it hurt. I knew what this was. The anniversary. Every year, like clockwork, the same call returned. The victims weren't alive, couldn't be alive, but the voice was trapped in something I couldn't understand. Something that refused to let go. "Units are being dispatched," I said, trying to ground myself. "Stay with me." "Talk to me." Another gurgle, desperate, pleading. "I can't move. Water. Cold." I closed my eyes, imagining the lake. Black and flat, indifferent. Twisted metal pressing in, water filling every crevice. And the voice, small, trapped, searching for air, for someone to hear it, for someone to answer. I could feel my chest tighten, my pulse thundering. I had traced this before. I knew the scene. I knew the bodies. I knew the impossible fact. No one alive should have been calling. And yet here it was. the same terrifying sound. "Keep talking," I whispered. "Help is coming," the line bubbled again. The words came through broken, distorted, underwater, like the victims were still trapped in that black lake. "Please, don't leave me," I swallowed hard. The echo of the first call came back vividly. The metallic splash, the gurgling, the pleading that had burrowed into my mind. I tried to remind myself it was impossible. The victims had been underwater for months. Nothing should remain, and yet the voice existed. The phone was alive in my hands. The static, the muffled gurgle, the impossible sound of someone trapped beneath water. It wrapped around my brain like cold, wet fingers. I could hear it in the silence of the dispatch office, in the hum of computers, in the flickering of the fluorescent lights. "Where exactly are you calling from?" I whispered, almost to myself. Are you underwater?" A weak gurgle answered, "Always." "Drowning?" I shivered. The words pressed into me like ice. The call wasn't just repeating the past. It was repeating the moment over and over, like the victims were stuck in an endless loop, trapped in the cold lake, trapped in the lines, trapped in my mind. I dispatched units again. Boats, dive teams, coordinates traced to the old accident site. They would find nothing, just like before. And yet I stayed on the line because I couldn't hang up. The voice needed someone. Needed me. "I'm right here," I whispered. "I'm not leaving. Can you describe anything around you?" Another muffled reply, broken by static. "Water." "Dark. Can't." "Open." I imagined the black lake, the submerged car, the trapped victims pressing against the metal and glass, unable to move. And somehow, the sound of their panic filtered through wires and silence reached me. The units radioed back after a tense half-hour. "Area checked, nothing, no one in the lake." "Scene clear." I nodded, but I didn't hang up. I couldn't. The voice bubbled faintly through the line, desperate and eternal. "Please, help me." I could feel my own pulse racing in my ears. My hands trembled and my chest ached with a mix of fear, frustration, and something else. Helplessness. I had seen death, traced the line, counted the drowned, and yet every year it returned. Every year as if the victims were still trapped, still screaming silently beneath the cold, black water. I leaned back in my chair, exhausted, but I didn't release the phone. I couldn't. Even after hours, the voice remained faint but persistent, repeating fragments of its drowning, of its panic, of its fear. "Water." "Dark. Can't." "Breathe. Don't leave me." I remembered my own first shift answering calls, how small and helpless I had felt. I remembered Lake Coldwater, the divers surfacing with empty hands, the backpack, the evidence of tragedy. And now I knew, with chilling certainty, that some voices don't rest. Some cries don't end when the body does. Some calls echo forever. Through lines, through water, through time, the anniversary would come again next year. I knew it. And the same call would return, muffled, desperate, underwater, eternal. I would answer it. I would always answer it, even knowing it could never be saved, even knowing the victims were long gone, because someone has to hear them. Someone has to be there. And as long as I live, I will not let the line go silent. The water claimed them. Time claimed them. And yet, the voice remains. Still drowning. Still calling. Still reaching. And I will always answer. It started just like any other night. I was sitting at my desk, the soft hum of the fluorescent lights above, mixing with the low buzz of my monitor. The apartment building was quiet. Too quiet, I thought at first. But I chalked it up to everyone being inside. Doors locked, lights off. Then I heard it, a scream. A sound that ripped through the silence like glass shattering on concrete. It was high-pitched, raw, animalistic. My fingers froze on the keyboard. I thought maybe it came from outside, a street fight or someone breaking in. But then it came again. Louder this time, closer, like it was echoing from the very walls around me. I grabbed my phone before I even realized I was reaching for it. The line to 911 was quick to dial, my hands trembling. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I was hoping someone else had heard it. Maybe I thought it was a mistake. Maybe I just wanted someone, anyone, to confirm I wasn't losing my mind. "Well, what's your emergency?" The voice was calm, professional. I wanted calm. I wanted normal. But there was nothing normal about that scream. There's someone screaming, I stammered, my voice low. In the apartment across the hall. Apartment 3B, I think someone might be in trouble. The operator's voice softened. Stay on the line, sir. Can you describe the noise? I swallowed hard. It's like someone's being hurt. I can't. It's hard to explain. It's horrible. My chest tightened. I could feel it, the scream, clawing at something inside me, something I couldn't name. It wasn't just fear. It was a feeling that something wrong had taken root in that apartment, and it had already started spreading. The operator assured me help was on the way. I walked to my door, hesitated, then cracked it open just enough to peek down the hall. Everything seemed still, too still. But then I heard it again, closer this time, a sound that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. It wasn't just a scream anymore. It was a series of screams, layered, overlapping, like a chorus of pain trapped inside four walls. I wanted to run. I wanted to hide. But I stayed. I couldn't move. I couldn't stop listening. It was mesmerizing in the worst way, a pull I didn't understand. I heard footsteps, or maybe they were dragging sounds, shuffling across the floor of that apartment. Something large moved inside, heavy, deliberate. My stomach turned. My skin crawled. I tried to tell myself it was just someone in a fight, someone drunk, someone with a horrible argument. But I knew deep down that it was something else, something worse. The first officer arrived before I even hung up. The knocking was sharp, demanding. The screams stopped immediately the moment they stepped into the hall, leaving a silence that felt heavier than the noise. The operator kept me on the line, asking me to describe what I had heard, my words trembling and failing me. I went down to meet the officers in the hall. Their uniforms looked clean, professional, but there was a tension in their shoulders, a hesitation I couldn't explain. They knocked on 3B's door, announcing themselves. Nothing, no answer, just the faint smell of something metallic, like copper mixed with bleach, that made my stomach twist. Neighbors heard something, I said, my voice small. Screaming. Lots of screaming, one of the officers frowned. Screaming? How long ago? Tonight. Just now, it was... I can't describe it. It wasn't normal screaming. My hands were shaking, my nails biting into my palms. I didn't want them to think I was crazy, but I didn't care. I just needed someone to believe me. They radioed in, and a second unit arrived. They banged on the door, called the number on file, announced themselves again. Still nothing. No voice, no movement. The quiet pressed down on us like a physical weight. I felt trapped in it, my ears straining for even the faintest sound, anything to explain what I had heard. The first officer turned to me. We'll check inside, but legally we can't force entry unless we see signs of immediate danger. I nodded, swallowing hard. My throat felt dry. I wanted to tell them, you don't understand, it's not just immediate danger, it's something else, but the words died in my mouth. I couldn't explain it. Not rationally, not in a way that wouldn't sound insane. They stayed at the door, radios crackling, trying to get a response. And then, just as suddenly as it had started, the screaming returned. Not muffled, not faint, clear, guttural, and horrifying. It came from inside the apartment. I felt my knees go weak. I wanted to run, but my feet stayed glued to the floor. The officer's eyes widened, his hand tightening on his radio. Did you hear that? I nodded, my voice barely above a whisper. Yes, that's it. That's what I heard. They tried to coax a response, shouting into the apartment, warning whoever or whatever was inside. But the only answer was the screaming continuous, building into a crescendo that felt like it could shatter the walls. I noticed something then. The scream wasn't random. It had rhythm, a pattern, almost like words, almost like someone or something was trying to communicate. But I couldn't understand it. I didn't want to. The second officer finally reached for the doorknob, hesitated, then pushed it open. The hinges creaked, the door swinging wide into darkness. And then, silence. I couldn't see anything. The hallway inside the apartment was empty. The furniture was sparse, dusty, abandoned. The only sound was our breathing, heavy and anxious. My heart pounded like a drum in my chest. I wanted to step forward, to see, to understand, but a sense of wrongness held me back. I felt it in my gut. The apartment itself was alive with something I couldn't explain. Something that had just screamed at the top of its lungs and then disappeared. The officers searched the apartment carefully. Closet doors were opened and closed. Cabinets were checked. Every corner was examined. There was nothing. Nothing but dust and shadow and the faint metallic scent that still made my stomach twist. I stepped closer to one wall. Something caught my eye. Scratches, claw marks deep and uneven gouged into the paint. Fresh, still wet. My hands shook so badly I had to grip the doorframe to stay upright. I couldn't look away. It was as if the wall had tried to fight back whatever had been inside. Or maybe it was a warning. The officers didn't see it at first. When they did, they exchanged uneasy glances. Looks like someone forced their way out. Or in, one muttered. But even their voice sounded hollow, unsure. I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. I just stared at those marks, trying to make sense of them, trying to convince myself it was human, that it was explainable. But it wasn't. I felt it, deep in my chest. Something had been here. Something had screamed. And it wasn't human. We left the apartment eventually. The officers filed reports, promises of follow-up and investigations. I went back to my own apartment, but the building felt different now. The walls seemed thinner, the air heavier. Every creak in the floorboards sounded like footsteps. Every distant sound, the thump of a radiator, the hum of a refrigerator, made me flinch. I couldn't stop thinking about the scream. Not just the sound, but the way it made my skin crawl, the way it reached inside me and pulled out a fear I didn't even know existed. I kept replaying it in my head, trying to convince myself I had imagined it, but I hadn't. I knew I hadn't. Even now, days later, I can hear it sometimes, soft, almost inaudible, like the walls themselves are whispering it back to me. A scream trapped in paint and plaster, claw marks and shadow. And I know deep down that it's still there, waiting for someone else to hear it. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept thinking about apartment 3B, about the screams and the claw marks, about the emptiness that felt alive. My mind kept circling back to the officers' faces, the way their jaws tightened, the hesitation in their eyes. They hadn't seen anything human inside, yet the apartment had screamed. How is that possible? I kept asking myself over and over. The next morning, I found myself walking toward the building again. I told myself it was curiosity, a need for closure, maybe even a need to prove to myself that I wasn't losing my mind. But the truth was, I needed to see it for myself, to confront the emptiness that had clawed at my chest the night before. The lobby was quiet. The receptionist barely looked up as I passed, her face blank behind the plexiglass. I went straight to the elevator, my hand shaking as I pressed the button for the 3rd floor. Each ding of the elevator felt too loud, too sharp, echoing through my skull. When I stepped out, the hall smelled faintly of bleach and dust, the same as the day before. I stopped outside apartment 3B. The door looked normal, peeling paint, brass knob, but it held a presence, a weight that made my stomach knot. I leaned closer, listening. Silence. No movement, no hum of life, nothing. Yet I could feel it inside, like the apartment was breathing beneath its walls. I knocked lightly. Nothing. I tried the handle. Locked. Of course. I could hear faint creaking from inside, subtle shifts in the floorboards, but no voices, no screams. I wanted to call 911 again, but the thought made my hands shake. I didn't want help. I wanted truth. I pressed my ear to the door, trying to catch a whisper, a hint of sound. Nothing. But then I noticed the scratches. The marks on the wall were deeper now, sharper. Someone, or something, had clawed at the door frame itself. My skin crawled. I wanted to pull back, but I couldn't. I needed to see inside. By mid-afternoon, a police officer I recognized from the previous night came back. His expression was guarded, tired. "Back again?" he asked. His voice was low. I just need to understand," I said, my words trembling. "I need to see inside." He hesitated, then shook his head. "Legally, we can't force entry unless we have a warrant or see immediate danger." His eyes flicked toward the scratches on the wall. Though Whatever happened in there, it doesn't make sense. Nothing was inside last night. Nothing human, I swallowed hard. So, it screamed. And then what? Nothing? He didn't answer. He just looked at me, his face tight, like he was holding back words he didn't want to say. I felt the weight of that silence pressing into me, heavier than the air itself. Hours passed. I stayed in the hallway, pretending to check my phone, pretending to wait for something normal, but my ears were tuned to the apartment. And then I heard it again. A faint scratching, like nails on wood, coming from inside. It wasn't violent this time. It was deliberate, slow, methodical, calculated. I stepped back, my chest tightening. My brain screamed at me to leave, to forget it, to call someone, anyone, but I couldn't. I stayed rooted to the spot, listening as the scratching shifted, moving across walls, brushing across floors. It was as if the apartment itself was alive, pacing, aware, waiting. The officer noticed, too. He drew his flashlight, shining it briefly on the door. "You hear that?" he whispered. I nodded. My throat was tight. I wanted to speak, but my voice refused. The scratching stopped suddenly, leaving a silence so thick it pressed against my eardrums. My stomach lurched. Then a single wet thud echoed from inside. Something had fallen, or maybe it had landed. The sound was hollow yet heavy. My legs threatened to buckle. The officer stepped forward, flashlight trembling in his grip, trying the door again. Locked. He cursed under his breath. I swear, every time we come here, it's like the apartment isn't empty, like it's hiding something. I tried to nod, but I couldn't speak. I wanted to tell him what I felt, what I knew. The emptiness wasn't just absence. It was presence. It was alive. It breathed in silence, it moved in shadow, it listened, and it remembered. We waited, both of us staring at the door. And then I noticed the faintest movement inside. A shadow, just on the other side of the frosted glass of the peephole. My chest froze. The shadow didn't move like a person. It moved like a weight shifting, like the air itself had folded. It was wrong. Impossible. "Did you see that?" I whispered. He nodded slowly, his face pale. "Yeah, I did, but nothing's supposed to be in there. It should be empty." We called for backup, thinking perhaps someone had sneaked in, someone hiding in the shadows. More officers arrived, more radios crackled, more flashlights swept the apartment. Every corner, every closet, every creaking floorboard was examined. But there was nothing. Nothing except the scratches. Fresh, wet clawed deep into the walls. They weren't random. They were patterns, repeated symbols that made no sense. My stomach turned. My hands shook. I wanted to reach out, touch them, understand them. But even from a distance, I could feel their intent. They weren't just marks. They were warnings. The officers decided to secure the apartment, tape it off until a proper investigation could be conducted. They left, leaving me lingering in the hallway, staring at 3B's door. Even with the crowd gone, the weight didn't lift. The apartment still breathed. It still waited. I went back to my own place, but sleep eluded me again. I kept replaying every sound, every thud, every scratch. Every time my mind tried to convince me it was nothing, I could feel it, something unnatural, something aware, something inside 3B, and the scratching didn't stop. In the days that followed, I spoke to neighbors. None of them admitted hearing anything, not like I did. I wondered if they were lying, or if the apartment only revealed itself to certain people, certain witnesses, certain victims. I began keeping notes. Times, sounds, movements. Patterns emerged. Not human patterns, not animal. Something else. Something patient. Something watching. One night I went back again, alone this time. The hall was dark, silent. I pressed my ear to the door. Almost immediately, I heard it. A dragging sound, soft but deliberate, circling inside. I felt my stomach twist. I wanted to run, but I couldn't. The apartment had a grip on me, and then just before I pulled back, I heard a whisper, almost inaudible but clear. My name. I staggered back, my hand flying to my chest. My voice wouldn't come. I could hear it again, faint, distant, but unmistakable. Not real, I told myself, but the sound persisted. I ran from the building that night. My own apartment never felt safe again. The memory of those empty rooms, of the scratches, of the whispers, haunted me. and every time I closed my eyes, I could hear the faintest scratching beneath the floorboards, the softest breath against the door, waiting. I know now that the apartment isn't empty. It never was. It's alive. It listens. It remembers. And it waits for anyone who dares to hear it, to feel it, to acknowledge it. I don't know what's inside. I don't know if it's human. I don't know if it's even something from this world. But I know one thing. If you hear it, if you feel it, you will never forget it. And you might not leave. It's been years since the first incident in apartment 3B, but it never left me. Not really. I moved across the city, changed buildings, jobs, everything I could think of to escape that corridor of screams. I tried to convince myself it had been a one-time thing, a strange fluke, maybe a prank, maybe someone unstable, maybe my own imagination feeding off fear. But then the calls started again. I was working the late shift at the emergency dispatch center, the one where the phones never stop ringing and your life becomes a constant blur of someone else's panic. I answered call after call, voices trembling, shouting, crying. But one number, one address, kept showing up like a ghost from my past. 3B, apartment 3B. At first, I thought it was coincidence. Old records, wrong numbers, but the system confirmed it. It was the same unit, same building, same layout. Only this time, no one had rented it in decades. I remember the first call vividly. My headset crackled to life in the quiet room. What's your emergency? I asked, in that calm, professional voice I'd perfected over the years. There was silence at first. Then a voice, distorted and raw, like someone shouting underwater. Help! Please, help. It was familiar. Too familiar. My stomach turned cold. I recognized the cadence, the tone, the terror. My hand shook on the headset, but I kept talking, pretending this was just another emergency. Can you tell me your location? I asked, trying to maintain control. Please! The voice broke into a scream. High-pitched, guttural, endless. I froze. My chair scraped against the floor as I leaned back, gripping the headset. The room, usually filled with ringing phones and chatter, seemed to vanish. I could only hear that scream echoing in my skull, that same scream I had heard years ago, the one that had chased me through hallways and nightmares. I told the operator next to me, my colleague, to check the address. He raised an eyebrow, typing quickly into the system. Then his face went pale. That unit hasn't been rented in 25 years, he said quietly. It's empty. Nothing's supposed to be there. I felt my stomach drop. My mind raced. I had thought leaving, moving, forgetting would be enough. But nothing was enough. The apartment hadn't forgotten me. It hadn't forgotten anyone. It had waited. I tried to talk to the caller again, to keep them on the line, to guide help. But the voice changed mid-call. It wasn't human anymore. Not fully. It distorted, stretching in ways that made my teeth ache just to hear. Words formed and dissolved into screams. Help. Leave. Trapped. I realized then that the apartment itself was calling. Somehow. Not a person, not a prank. Something inside 3B had learned to reach out. And it knew me. Over the next few weeks, the calls continued. Always the same pattern. A silent pause, a distorted scream, the faintest whisper of my own voice asking for help. I began documenting every call, every sound, every trembling syllable. Every time the same address, 3B. Apartment 3B. The more I listened, the more I noticed subtle changes. The voice wasn't just screaming, it was learning, mimicking, echoing back my own tone, my own fear. It wasn't just someone trapped. It was aware, patient, calculating. I went back to the building once, curious and terrified in equal measure. I told myself I was brave. I told myself I needed answers. But when I arrived, the lobby was quiet, unassuming. The walls smelled faintly of dust and bleach like before, but somehow heavier. I took the elevator to the 3rd floor. The hallway stretched out like a tunnel of silence. I stopped outside apartment 3B. The door was intact. Paint faded, the brass handle dull, but I could feel it again. That weight, that presence, that unspoken awareness that something inside was watching, waiting, remembering. I knocked lightly. Nothing. I tried the handle. Locked, of course. And then I heard it. A soft scratching, faint but deliberate, coming from the walls. The apartment hadn't changed. It was the same. Empty, yet alive. Waiting. I stepped back, my hand trembling. My breath came fast. Then I heard something new. A faint voice from inside mimicking my own. It whispered my name. Not loud, not clear, just enough for my blood to run cold. Naimura. I stumbled backward. I hadn't told anyone my name in years at work. How could it know? The scratching escalated suddenly, louder, moving across walls, floors, ceiling. It wasn't random. It was deliberate, intentional. The apartment was alive and it wanted me to know it, to feel it, to fear it. I ran from the building that night. My car keys shook in my hand. My chest burned with panic and adrenaline. But even as I drove away, I could hear it. Faint, almost imperceptible in the hum of the tires against the road. In the wind. In the shadows of the streetlights. It followed me. Back at the dispatch center, the calls never stopped. Sometimes I didn't answer, too afraid to hear what would come next. Sometimes I tried to transfer them, but the line was always routed back. 3B, apartment 3B. Always. I began noticing patterns. Every time a new operator answered, the call would come back to me, as if the apartment had a memory, as if it knew who would listen, who would feel fear. I tried telling my supervisors. They laughed gently, thinking I was stressed, overworked. But I wasn't. I wasn't imagining it. I couldn't. I started avoiding the building entirely. I stopped walking by the neighborhood. I even considered moving again. But 3B had attached itself to me like a parasite. It didn't matter where I went. It only mattered that I listened, that I remembered, that I feared. And then one night I received a call unlike the others. The operator line rang, sharp, urgent. I answered reflexively. The voice that came through was mine, my own voice, repeating the words I had used so many times. 911, what's your emergency? I froze. My fingers clenched the headset. The voice continued, looping, distorted, layered with static and something else, something unearthly. It was calling me. It knew me. It had learned me. I dropped the headset. My heart raced. I couldn't breathe. The apartment was no longer just a place. It was a presence, a being. It had been waiting all these years, learning, mimicking, shaping itself around the fear it had gathered. I don't know how many operators heard it before me or after me. I don't know how many people it has trapped in its endless loop of screams. All I know is that apartment 3B never forgets. It waits, it listens, it calls. And it always finds someone who will answer. Even now, years later, I can still hear it sometimes, faint in the hum of the city, a scratching behind walls, a whisper just beyond comprehension. My own voice echoing back at me. It hasn't stopped, and I don't think it ever will. It had been years since the last call from 3B, but the memory never left me. Every night I'd hear whispers in the back of my mind, faint scratching behind walls, echoes of that impossible scream. I had thought I was done with it. I had thought leaving the city, changing jobs, leaving dispatch work behind would keep it away. I was wrong. It started subtly at first. A soft hum in the phone lines at the office. A static buzz I couldn't explain. Then the number popped up again. Not on my caller ID, not in any record, just ringing insistently, like it had been waiting for me to pick up. I froze before answering. My hand hovered over the headset. Every instinct screamed at me not to pick up, but I did. I had to. Curiosity, terror, obsession, it didn't matter. I knew I had no choice. What's your emergency? I asked automatically, my voice shaking. Silence. Then a sound so familiar it made my blood run cold. My own voice. Speaking. Exactly as I would. 911, what's your emergency? I jerked the headset away. My heart pounded in my chest like a war drum. My fingers trembled. I forced myself to pick it up again. It's me, I whispered. I don't understand. The voice continued, looping, repeating, overlaying itself with static and distortion. And then screams. Not just any screams. My own screams from that first night years ago, echoing, layered, impossibly alive. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. I tried to hang up, but the line wouldn't disconnect. It was tethered, bound, pulling me in like a current too strong to fight, and then I heard it. Not the distorted mimicry, not the screaming, but something new. Movement. Inside the apartment. Slow, deliberate, dragging footsteps across the floor, brushing against the walls, circling. The sound of something breathing. I hadn't been near the building in years. I hadn't even thought about 3B in months. And yet it knew me. It knew my voice, my fear. It had adapted, learned, waited. I dialed the operator line again, trying to patch it through, trying to get help. My hands shook violently. When someone answered, their voice sounded normal at first. Then, the voice changed. Their words warped into mine. "Winna, what's your emergency?" It said again, perfectly mimicking me. I could feel my own panic reflected back at me, multiplied. I stumbled backward in my chair. I tried to leave the room. My legs refused to move. It was as if the sound had locked me in place. And then I heard it, scratching. Slow, deliberate, circling. From inside the apartment, from inside the phone. From everywhere and nowhere all at once. The voice spoke again, this time forming words I didn't recognize. Or maybe I did. They felt like memories, fragments of fear I had never spoken aloud. My own voice twisted, calling for help. Not asking, demanding, pulling, drawing me closer. I realized with a cold certainty, the apartment had learned me. Every inflection, every hesitation, every tiny tremor of fear I had ever let slip, it had stored them. And now it was using them, calling me back, drawing me in. The room went cold. My breath fogged in front of me. The screens around me flickered, static filling them, forming shapes I couldn't focus on. Shadows danced just beyond vision. The voice repeated again, clearer this time, impossibly close. "It's me. It's waiting. Come home." The words were mine. My tone, my cadence. I could feel my own fear speaking to me from a place I couldn't see. And then a scream burst through the line, high-pitched, raw, guttural, the same scream that had first haunted me years ago. I wanted to cover my ears. I wanted to run. I wanted to vanish. But I couldn't. I realized then that the apartment wasn't just a location. It wasn't just a building. It was a trap, a sentient thing. It had existed, yes, in 3B, but it could reach beyond the walls. Through wires, through sound, through memory. It was everywhere it needed to be and nowhere at the same time. I dropped the headset. My hands shook so violently I couldn't pick it up again. I sank to the floor, chest heaving, listening. The line continued, unbroken. My voice, my screams, my fear. Layered, infinite, impossible to escape. I tried to leave. The office doors were locked. The hallways stretched longer than they should. Shadows moved against the walls, echoing shapes I couldn't identify. The scratching followed me. Always following. Always circling, waiting, I shouted for help. No one came. My coworkers were gone, vanished into thin air, or maybe already consumed by the echoes. I don't know. I don't remember. All I remember is the sound of my own voice, calling for help, calling me home. And then I heard a door open. Not a real door, but a sound, a presence. A threshold. Something crossing from inside the apartment into my world. Something dragging, slow, heavy. I backed into a corner. My eyes scanned the office, the walls, the floor, the ceiling, but there was nothing. And yet I felt it. All around me, pressing in. The voice spoke again, soft this time, intimate. "I've been waiting." "You never left," I screamed. My voice joined the chorus of my own echoes. The line on the phone warped, bending sound around itself, folding my fear into itself, multiplying it. And then, silence. Only silence. But I knew it hadn't ended. I never would. Because the apartment had me. It had always had me. And now, somehow, it could reach out, touch, mimic, haunt me, even across time and distance. I left the office that night. I tried to move. Tried to hide. But I could hear it in my dreams. In my own voice calling me back. The scratches. The dragging. The whispers. Always waiting, always learning, always patient. I know what it wants. It wants me to answer. To pick up. To listen. To return. And I fear that one day I will. Because fear isn't something you fight. It's something that follows you, burrows into you, feeds, and waits. I've tried to warn others, tried to forget, but I can't. The line will ring again. The voice will come back, and it will be my own. Apartment 3B isn't empty. It never was. It isn't just a place. It's a predator, and it knows my name, and now it knows yours too. I've answered hundreds of calls. Some are panicked, some are routine, some just want someone to listen. But nothing had ever felt like this. It was a Tuesday night, quiet for the city. The kind of quiet that presses against your ears, makes your own heartbeat sound too loud. I was halfway through my shift at the dispatch center, the screens glowing in the dim light, the hum of computers and faint chatter of other operators filling the room. That's when it came, a blocked number. No caller ID, nothing. Just the shrill beep that said someone wanted help but didn't want to be identified. My fingers hovered over the headset. I know the protocol. Pick up immediately, stay calm, get the details, but there's always a moment where hesitation creeps in. 1. What's your emergency? I said, voice steady, professional. The line was static for a long beat, and then a voice. A woman's voice. Sharp, panicked, trembling like it could shatter any second. Please, someone's in my house, she whispered, and it made me catch my breath. It wasn't screaming, just terror curling through every word. I don't know who it is. I don't want them to find me. I leaned forward. Ma'am, can you tell me your location? There was a rustle in the background. A soft dragging sound, like someone moving through papers, or maybe across a wooden floor. Her voice shook. I don't want to. Ma'am, I need an address. Please, I can help you, but I need to know where you are. More rustling. A floorboard creaked in the background. Then a pause. Too long? Please, she said again, softer now, almost like she was afraid to breathe too loudly. I pressed a button to get her last known cell tower ping. It was faint, a blurry location in a residential neighborhood. Not precise, but something to go on. Stay on the line, ma'am. Officers are on the way. Can you lock yourself somewhere? She choked back a sob. I can't. There was a sudden, almost imperceptible shift in the background sound. The soft shuffle became sharper. Like footsteps now, slow, deliberate, close. Listen to me. You have to hide. Anywhere. Closet, bathroom, bedroom, lock the door if you can, I urged. My voice was calm, but my hands were tight on the headset, knuckles white. I don't think I can, she said, voice trembling. He's right there. And then silence. I waited, my heart hammering. The line stayed open, dead air filling it with static. I tried calling back. The line rang, then went to voicemail. My stomach sank. Something about her voice, the fear in it stuck in my chest. I could still hear it echoing in my mind. I checked the ping again. It hadn't moved. I could see a small house, quiet streets, dark windows. I dispatched officers immediately, giving them the location, urging them to hurry. But even after I hung up, even after I moved to the next call, the image of her voice, the sheer terror in it, lingered. Later, I tried to shake it off. Part of me knew people called from blocked numbers all the time. Part of me knew panicked calls were normal. But there was something different, something primal in the way she whispered, the way the sound of someone else in her house made my skin crawl. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept imagining the soft shuffle, the quiet creak, the impossible thought that maybe she was still there, trapped, and I was the only one who knew. I told myself the officers would find her. They had to, but my mind wouldn't let go. The next morning, my supervisor asked if I was okay. I lied, nodded, said yes, but even sitting at my desk in the light of day, it didn't feel real. The fear she had carried over the phone, it was infectious. It lingered, like a shadow you can't shake, brushing the edges of your thoughts. I thought about the blocked number. Why block it? If it was her, terrified, needing help, why hide? Was it someone playing a cruel joke? No, I knew that voice. The tremor, the desperation. It wasn't acting. And then I noticed something else. The sound. That faint background noise. Not just footsteps, but breathing. Heavy, uneven, like the intruder was close. The kind of sound that makes your body tense without realizing it. I played the call back over and over, letting it loop in my headphones. And every time I swore I could hear it getting closer, I called the precinct to confirm. They went to the address, but there was nothing. Empty house. No signs of forced entry. No one inside. Nothing but the faint scent of something, like smoke or dust, but no people. I hung up the phone slowly, my hands shaking. How could that be? She sounded real. I heard her. I felt her fear, and now... Nothing. For the rest of the day, I kept glancing at my headset, half expecting it to ring again. Blocked number. Unknown caller. My stomach tightened every time the phone buzzed. I was waiting, even though I knew I shouldn't be. By the time my next shift rolled around, I was on edge. Every call felt like it could be her. Every blocked number made my blood run cold. And I started to notice things, small things, sounds in the background of other calls, barely there. A creak, a soft whisper, like she was trying to reach me again. I told myself I was imagining it. It had to be my mind playing tricks after that first call. But deep down, I knew it wasn't imagination. That night, the phone rang. Blocked number. I picked it up, heart pounding, mouth dry. Please, the same voice whispered. Someone's in my house, and everything went cold. The shuffle, the creak, the quiet, deliberate footsteps. They were back. The next night, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept drifting back to her voice, the tremor, the panic, the subtle shuffle of someone moving just out of sight. Every sound in my apartment felt louder, sharper. The hum of the fridge, the creak of the floorboards, even my own breathing seemed intrusive, threatening. I told myself it was over. She'd called once. The officers would have checked the house. Everything would be fine. But when I arrived at the dispatch center, my stomach dropped. The phone rang. Blocked number. I froze, my hand hovering over the headset. My rational brain screamed it was impossible. Someone calling again, from the same place? But the gut feeling I couldn't shake said otherwise. I picked up. 911. What's your emergency? The line was quiet for a moment. Then her voice, almost exactly the same. Almost. Please. Someone's in my house, she whispered. My heart skipped. I could recognize that tone anywhere. It was her. But something was different. The background noise, subtle but there. Not exactly the same shuffle, not exactly the same creak. Almost like the first night, but warped. Ma'am? Are you there? I asked, voice steadier than I felt. Yes. Yes, I don't know who it is. Her words trembled, but faintly, almost as if she were farther away. Or maybe trapped somewhere different? I leaned forward, listening. I could hear a faint echo under her voice, a soft, almost imperceptible hum like a room far away. I muted my microphone for a second just to focus, the shuffle in the background, slow, dragging. Then a soft thump. Pause. Then another. I pressed the record button on my console. Not official protocol, but I needed to hear this again. I needed to make sense of it. Ma'am, can you tell me your location? I asked again carefully. I can't... I don't know. The sound behind her shifted, softer, then sharper. A low scrape like nails on wood. My stomach twisted. My mind kept telling me it was a recording, but it couldn't be. The inflection, the tiny variations in her tone. It was too human. Stay on the line. Help is coming, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. I listened harder. Every night I'd heard things on calls before, faint noises I couldn't identify. But this was different. The shuffle, the scraping, even the irregular hum underneath, it felt alive, watching, waiting, then it hit me. The timing of the words. Each sentence came slightly after the one before, the pauses. Wrong. It was like someone, or something, had recorded the first call and was replaying it, but not perfectly. Errors, tiny echoes, background differences. My pulse raced. I grabbed the log from last night, played it back on my headset. I compared. Every word almost identical. But yes, differences. Footsteps slightly shifted. The soft thump was now at the start, not the end. A faint rattle where there hadn't been one before. I realized cold dread creeping into my chest. It wasn't her. Not exactly. Someone or something was copying her voice, replaying it, and adjusting it. Ma'am, can you hear me? I said, though part of me already knew I wasn't speaking to a person. Yes, yes. The voice paused. Then a whisper, softer, almost a hiss. I don't want him. I swallowed hard. My hands shook. I knew what him meant. The intruder. The danger. The fear that had made her voice shake so violently the first night. And now I was listening to it, again in real time, or a twisted version of it. I tried to call back. Blocked number. Couldn't connect. I played the call again on the record, rewound, listened every microsecond. And then I noticed it. The breathing. Not hers. Heavy. Uneven. Close. Threatening. I sat frozen in the dispatch chair, the hum of computers around me suddenly deafening. My imagination tried to make sense of it. Maybe a prank, maybe a glitch. But the sound wasn't digital. It was alive. And it was waiting. I called the precinct immediately. Explained everything. They said they'd check the address again. Nothing could be found the night before. Nothing would be found tonight either. I didn't hang up. I couldn't. I had to hear it again. The voice repeated the same lines, word for word. But the background noises kept shifting. A soft rattle in one place, now a creak on the left. A long pause where there hadn't been one before. I realized with a chill that someone or something was observing me as much as I was observing them. Adjusting. Testing. I leaned back, rubbing my eyes. I could feel it watching. The dispatch room suddenly felt claustrophobic. Every shadow, every flicker of fluorescent light seemed like it could hide eyes. Hours passed like that. Listening, replaying, comparing. The voice, the footsteps, the soft breathing, over and over. The pattern was almost perfect. Except it wasn't. And that imperfection made it worse. Too human. Too deliberate. I couldn't shake the thought. If it could copy her, it could copy anyone. Me, the next operator. The world outside. The voice was no longer just a call. It was a trap. I forced myself to log out, leave the center, step outside. The night was quiet. Too quiet. My footsteps on the pavement echoed unnaturally. And I imagined someone, or something, watching from the shadows, copying my every move. I got home, locked the door, and sat in the dark, trying to convince myself it was just a prank, a glitch, my imagination. But even then, the memory of her voice, of the slight differences in the background, made me flinch at every sound. Then my phone buzzed. Blocked number. I didn't answer. Not immediately. I stared at it, hand trembling. The number couldn't be traced. The location unknown. I felt something cold brush against the back of my neck, and I swear I heard a soft shuffle right outside my apartment. I don't know how long I sat there, paralyzed. When I finally dared to look through the peephole, nothing. Just the empty, silent hallway. I put the phone on silent, tried to sleep. But in my dreams, I heard her again, whispering, panicked. And behind her, that breathing, close, threatening, watching. I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing again. Blocked number, and I knew, whatever this was, it wasn't finished. It wouldn't stop. I couldn't take it anymore. The calls, the echoes, the way her voice, or whatever it had become, haunted me. Every time the phone rang, every blocked number, my stomach twisted into knots. My coworkers noticed my exhaustion. I didn't care. I was obsessed, trapped in this spiral of sound and fear. That night, I sat at my desk, headset in hand, watching the clock tick closer to midnight. I told myself I wasn't going to pick up. Not this time. But the buzzing started. Blocked number. Slow, deliberate, insistent. I froze. My hand trembled above the phone. And then I heard it. A whisper. Please, help me. It was her voice. No doubt. The same tremor, the same panic, but now different. Now there was recognition. Awareness. I gripped the headset anyway and answered. 911, what's your emergency? There was a pause. Then, please, help me. Nimra. My stomach dropped. My name, my voice. She, or it, knew my name. I choked back a gasp. The line went quiet for a beat, then soft breathing, heavy and uneven. Close. Too close. I can't get out, the voice sobbed. Please, Nimra, help me! I stood, heart hammering. My hands shook so badly I could barely hold the headset. I looked around the dispatch center. Other operators worked quietly, unaware, oblivious. I was alone in this. And I wasn't just listening anymore. I was part of it. Somehow, I tried to calm myself, to focus. Ma'am, where are you? Where are you trapped? No answer. Only the faint shuffle behind her voice, slower, deliberate, as if she or it was moving around, listening, waiting. I see you, the voice whispered. I hear you, Nimra. I dropped the headset, My fingers flew over the console, checking caller ID, tracing, pinging, anything. Blocked number, no trace. Every log, every system, clean. But the voice. The voice knew my name. The room felt suddenly smaller. Shadows stretched across the walls. I could hear soft steps behind me. Not real, not possible. My mind told me it was impossible, but my body screamed otherwise. I grabbed the headset again, voice shaking. "Who is this? Who are you? Don't look. Nimra." The whisper was insistent, pleading. He's here. In the dark. Don't turn around." I froze. Every instinct screamed to look, to check behind me, to run. But something stopped me. I couldn't risk it. And then the voice changed. No longer panicked, calm, almost sinister. "I've been waiting for you, Nimra." The hair on my arm stood on end. My heart pounded so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I backed away from the desk, eyes scanning the darkened corners of the center, shadows twisting in the flickering fluorescent light. The voice whispered again. "We're together now, finally. You hear me, Nimra?" It wasn't her. It was never her, but it had her voice. It had her fear, and now it had me. My own name, my own fear, woven into the sound. I tried to hang up. Nothing. The headset was glued to my hand, or maybe my own mind refused to let go. The voice continued, relentless. "I can see everything you do, every breath, every heartbeat. Every time you try to run." I couldn't move, couldn't think, couldn't breathe. My ears filled with that trembling voice, layered over the soft shuffle, the uneven breathing, the impossible closeness of something watching. I tried to speak, but my throat closed. "Please, whoever you are." "What do you want? Me?" The whisper was amused. "I want you, Nimra, just like her, just like everyone who listens too closely." And then silence. The silence pressed in. My hand shook so badly I dropped the headset again. My chair creaked as I collapsed into it. I thought maybe it was over. Maybe I'd imagined it. But the moment I relaxed, I felt it. Something cold brushing the back of my neck. Not imagined, real. The phone buzzed. Blocked number. Slowly, deliberately, I didn't pick it up. My head whipped around. Nothing. Just the empty, dark center. My reflection in the monitor's glow stared back at me. Pale, terrified, trembling. Then, the whisper. Too late. "Nimra!" I bolted. Out of the chair, down the hall, through the locked doors of the center, the echo of that voice chasing me, following me. I didn't look back. I didn't stop. My mind screamed, "Run! Run!" I reached my car, fumbling with keys, hands slick with sweat. The streets outside were empty. Too quiet. Every shadow seemed to twist, to breathe. I drove faster than I'd ever driven, lights blurring, heart racing, the memory of her voice, of its voice, burning in my skull. I tried to call back. Blocked number. Couldn't reach it. Couldn't escape it. Even now, hours later, sitting in my apartment with doors locked, I can hear it sometimes. Faint, soft, almost behind me. "Hello, Nimra." I know it's waiting. Watching, knowing, copying, repeating. And one day, it will come closer. I can't ignore the phone. I can't leave the headset. I can't stop listening because I know, deep down, it will never stop. And one day, it will say my name. Not as a warning, but as a promise. I remember the radio crackling in my ear that night. The way the static seemed almost alive, shifting and scratching at the edges of my mind. I wasn't the one on the street. I was behind the glass at the station, hands wrapped around a mug of lukewarm coffee, staring at the monitors. But I knew somehow that this night was different. The tension wasn't in the crimes or the city's hum. It was in the silence between calls, the pause that pressed on my chest like a fist. Then came the first transmission. Unit 47, pursuit in progress, suspect heading east on Maple. The officer's voice was sharp, clipped, professional. And then, almost immediately, it cracked. I leaned forward, coffee forgotten as the words stretched into a scream. He's, oh God! The static swallowed part of it, but the panic shone through. Unit 47, repeat. What's your... I began, reaching for the radio, my pulse hammering. But the line went dead, just dead. The monitors showed nothing unusual. just the streets blurred under the headlights of patrol cars. But the sound of that scream stayed with me, raw and ragged, as if it had climbed into my ears and planted itself there. I rewound the recording immediately, heart thumping, fingers shaking. The radio spat out the call again, rough and broken, and I played it at full volume. The officer's voice was there, terrified, screaming, running, and then cut. Just a sudden, horrifying silence. My stomach churned, but I couldn't stop listening. I had heard screams before. We all had. But this was different. There was a desperation in it that didn't belong to fear of a suspect or a dangerous street. This was personal. This was raw. The dispatcher next to me, an older guy named Harris, noticed my focus. He squinted at the monitor, rubbed his temple. "You hear that?" he said. Not casual, just a low, tense whisper. It's like he's not just scared. He's screaming at something. I shook my head, trying to calm the rising panic that coiled in my chest. "It's a chase," I said, my voice tight. "He's calling it in. That's all." But I didn't believe it, not really. Not when the scream ended with a sound I didn't understand. A wet, gurgling sound that seemed almost human. Almost something else. I hit replay again. The words were there. The scream was there. But now I noticed it more. The faintest whisper beneath his voice, a rasping hiss that didn't belong to him. I shook my head, thinking I was imagining it, letting my mind play tricks. The line crackled again. "Unit 47, he's..." And then it cut sharply. I grabbed the phone to call the officer on another channel, but there was no response. Just static, endless, whispering static that made my skin crawl. The monitors showed the streets, empty now except for the police cars, lights flickering. My stomach sank. Something had happened. I could feel it. I tried the backup channels, called the nearby precinct, but no one had seen him. Unit 47 was just gone. Harris leaned over, voice low. "You've been here long enough to know the calls don't sound like that unless..." He didn't finish, but I knew exactly what he meant. The ones who disappear sometimes leave echoes behind. I didn't sleep that night. Not really. I just sat at the station listening to the replay over and over, trying to make sense of it. Each time I caught a little more, the rasp beneath the scream, a word I couldn't quite make out, but it felt angry, urgent, almost pleading. Something that wasn't human, something that didn't belong. I closed my eyes and tried to remember the streets where he had been. Maple Street? It was a narrow road lined with broken lampposts and abandoned shops, a place where shadows linger longer than they should. I pictured him running, siren lights flashing over wet asphalt, tires squealing, and then that sound. The thing behind his voice, whatever it was, seemed to ride the wind, sliding into my ears. The next day, the official report came in. Unit 47, killed in the line of duty during pursuit. Cause undetermined. No suspects apprehended. Vehicle abandoned. The report was cold, sterile. It stripped all emotion from what had happened and turned it into numbers and bullet points. But I remembered the scream. I remembered the gurgle, the whispered hiss, the way it had sounded like the city itself was breathing through him. I couldn't stop thinking about it. Every sound in the station seemed to echo it. The hum of the fluorescent lights, the scratch of pens on paper, the distant hiss of traffic outside. I kept replaying the call, listening, hoping to catch a clue, a hint of what had happened. There was one thing I noticed that no one else seemed to. When the officer screamed, his voice didn't just end. It seemed to pull something after it, like a shadow stretching behind a running man. And in that shadow, I could almost hear a shape forming. Not physical, not something I could point to, but it was there. I felt it in my chest, a pressure that didn't ease, a presence that hovered just outside of sight. I started writing notes, short phrases, observations, details about the sound, the timing, the way the static seemed to bend around his voice. I even tried spectrograph analysis on the recording, though I knew it was probably pointless. Something in me refused to let it go. I couldn't let it fade into the official report, the cold facts, the sterile numbers. It was alive. Whatever had happened, it was alive. Late that night, the station was quiet. Too quiet. I was the only one left in the dispatch room. I played the recording one more time. The scream ripped through the speakers, but this time, I swear, I heard something new. A word, clear, guttural, low. Not English, not anything I recognized. Something that slithered through the sound like smoke, curling around the edges of my mind. I dropped the headset. My hands shook. My chest felt tight, like something heavy was pressing down from above. I tried to tell myself it was just a trick of the sound, that my imagination was running wild. But deep down, I knew better. I had heard the echo of something that wasn't meant to be heard. I spent the rest of the night pacing, staring at the monitors, feeling the weight of eyes that weren't there. And when dawn came, I didn't feel relief. I felt watched, tracked, as if the night hadn't ended at all but had merely shifted into a different shape. The scream lingered in my mind, looping endlessly, and beneath it, that whisper, the thing that had called after him, whatever it was, waiting for me to listen again. When the new shift arrived, I replayed the call for them, trying to get someone else to hear it, to understand what I had felt. They all shrugged, uneasy but dismissive. They didn't hear it. Or maybe they were too afraid to. I couldn't stop hearing it. Not in the recording, not in the city, not even in my own dreams. Unit 47 was gone, and whatever had taken him, whatever had screamed through him before the line went dead, had left a mark on me. I could feel it pulsing just beneath the surface, a slow, insistent rhythm, like a heartbeat I couldn't escape. I didn't know then what it was, or if I ever would. All I knew was that the radio wasn't just a tool for communication that night. It was a doorway, and Unit 47, my friend, my co-worker, had been the first to cross through it, and I wasn't sure how long it would be before it called for me. I couldn't stop thinking about that night. The scream, the static, the shadow that seemed to cling to the edges of Unit 47's voice. I tried to tell myself it was just fear, just a man caught in a dangerous chase, but deep down I knew that was a lie. There was something beneath it, something waiting. The next day I was back at my desk before the morning shift. The station smelled the same, old coffee, faint bleach, and the kind of dust that never leaves. I'd replayed the call a dozen times already, and each time I heard something new. Or maybe it was just that my mind refused to forget the first scream. Harris noticed my obsession immediately. He leaned over my shoulder, squinting at the waveform on the screen. "You've been listening to that thing all morning," he said. His voice was calm, but there was an edge there. "It's a recording. It's over. You can't change what happened." I shook my head. "No, listen. There's something under his voice. Something in the background." He raised an eyebrow. "Background?" I clicked replay, adjusted the frequencies, slowed it down. The scream tore through the speakers again, jagged and desperate. Then, almost beneath it, I heard it. A low, guttural whisper, like something sliding over gravel. It wasn't language. Not any language I knew. But it had intent. Malice, anger, and impossibly I felt a thread of pleading. Harris's eyes widened. "I don't hear anything," he said. And for a moment I wondered if I was losing my mind. But then it came again. That rasping undertone curling beneath the scream like smoke. This time I caught a word, faint but unmistakable. "Come." My stomach turned. I stopped the playback. My hands were trembling and I could feel sweat prickling at my temples. "It's nothing," I muttered, though my voice didn't sound convincing even to me. I kept telling myself it was audio artifacts, interference, the city, the radio, but it didn't feel like that. It felt deliberate, alive. Over the next few days, I obsessed over the recording. I replayed it at different speeds, different channels, even tried isolating the frequencies. And each time, the whisper became clearer. Words that weren't words, sounds that weren't human, but always the same tone, hungry, urgent, almost alive. The station didn't help. People came and went, checked in, made small talk, asked if I'd finished my paperwork. I nodded, smiled, pretended. But inside, I was counting the pauses, the static, the invisible thread that followed Unit 47's scream. One evening, after everyone had left, I sat alone with the audio again. I slowed it down as far as I could, letting the whisper stretch and coil. That's when I realized something horrifying. The whisper wasn't just behind his voice, it was inside it. Layered, overlapping, growing, as if Unit 47's voice hadn't been his alone. I hit replay again, and this time I heard more than I had before. There was a rhythm, a pattern. The scream, the shout, the gurgle, and beneath it, the whisper. But it wasn't random. It was a call, a command. And somewhere beneath everything, I thought I heard laughter. Quiet, wet, cruel laughter that made my chest ache with dread. I leaned back in my chair, rubbing my eyes, trying to convince myself I was imagining it. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. Unit 47 hadn't just died. Something had claimed him. And the echo of that claim was still here, in the recording, in the air, pressing down on me. That night, I took the audio home. I wanted to listen on my own, with no one around. The apartment was silent, the city outside muted behind drawn curtains. I played the recording at a low volume, just enough to hear the whisper beneath the scream. And then I noticed it, a second layer I hadn't heard before. It wasn't words, not in any language I knew, but it was a sound that made my skin crawl. Wet, ragged like nails scraping bone, and beneath that a pattern, a rhythm, repeating, pulsing, almost like a heartbeat. I paused the audio and sat in the dark, chest tight, hands shaking. I tried to rationalize. It was just interference. It was a trick of my mind, but my heart refused to listen. I could feel it. That whisper was alive, and it wanted something. I couldn't sleep. Not really. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the whisper curling around the screen, around my thoughts. It was patient, waiting, and the more I tried to ignore it, the louder it became in my mind. Days passed. I stopped answering the phone. I avoided the station when I could, but the whisper followed, always faint, always just beyond hearing, in the hum of lights, in the creak of floorboards, in the static of my car radio. Finally, I brought the recording back to Harris. He listened, careful, head tilted, eyebrows knitted. When it ended, he was silent for a long time. "You're hearing things," he said finally, but his voice didn't carry conviction. "It's just the recording." I leaned closer. "You don't hear the whisper? The layer beneath him?" He hesitated, then shook his head. "No, I hear the scream. That's it. Maybe you're just too close. Too close." I wanted to scream. I wanted to tell him that closeness wasn't the problem. The problem was that it was following me, that it had already chosen me, and now it was patient, waiting for me to understand it. The next night, alone again, I tried something desperate. I played the audio backward. Not for a trick, not to find hidden messages. I just needed to know. And in the reversed static, in the twisted, distorted hiss of the playback, I heard it clearly for the first time. Words. Clearer than ever. Follow. That was all. Just one word, but it carried weight. A pull. A pressure that I could feel in my chest. I paused the recording, trembling. My apartment felt colder, the shadows deeper, and I realized with a sick certainty that it wasn't just a voice. It wasn't just a call. It was an invitation. I tried to fight it. I wanted to delete the recording, smash the hard drive, burn everything, but something in me hesitated. Curiosity, fear, and maybe something else. A thread of understanding I didn't want to admit. The days blurred. I became irritable, distracted, obsessed. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every sound reminded me of it. The hiss of the fridge, the hum of my computer, the soft tapping of rain on the windows. Always the whisper, always calling. One evening, I found myself back at the station. Harris was gone, and the night dispatcher was asleep at his desk. I pulled up the recording, isolated the whisper again. I had to hear it. I had to understand it. And as I listened, I realized the worst part. It wasn't just repeating the call. It was learning, changing, adapting. The whisper became sharper, more insistent. Not just a sound now, but a presence. It felt like fingers brushing my skin, pulling at me, tugging at my thoughts. And then, faintly, I heard it under everything else. A laugh. Slow, wet, deliberate. Not human, not something alive. Something else. Something hungry. I dropped the headphones. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely grip the desk. The office lights flickered. And I knew, with a certainty that made my stomach turn, that the whisper had noticed me. It was patient. It was waiting. And I had listened too long. I left the station that night, walked out into the empty streets, feeling like the shadows themselves were watching. The whisper followed me in every echo, every distant footstep, every rustle of leaves. It wasn't a sound anymore. It was there. in the corners of my mind, in the spaces between my thoughts, curling, pulsing, alive. And I realized the truth I had been running from. It hadn't finished with Unit 47. It had simply started with him. And now somehow it was starting with me. I didn't know what it wanted. I didn't know what it was. But I knew I couldn't ignore it. And I wasn't sure I could survive listening to it any longer. Weeks had passed since the whisper started following me. Weeks that felt like months, compressed into long nights where the hum of fluorescent lights became a chorus of whispers, a rhythm I couldn't escape. I tried everything: therapy, noise-canceling headphones, leaving the station early, but it didn't matter. The voice was inside me now, patient, waiting, watching. I hadn't answered any calls. Not really. Not unless they were urgent. Harris noticed, of course, but he didn't press too hard. Some things he knew were better left unspoken. It was a Wednesday night, the kind of night when the city feels hollow, streets empty, lights flickering like a warning. I was alone in the dispatch room, sipping lukewarm coffee, pretending I was doing paperwork. The whisper was quiet this time, just a thread, curling around my mind. But I felt it. Every heartbeat, every shallow breath. Then the radio cracked. Dispatch? Need backup. Unit 47. Please, back up. My blood ran cold. I froze, every nerve screaming. Unit 47! The voice was unmistakable. Raw, ragged, pleading. But that was impossible. He was dead. Officially dead. Gone. Yet there it was, speaking through the radio, calling me by the same inflection, the same urgency. I grabbed the microphone, fingers trembling. Unit 47? This is dispatch! Repeat your location. Are you okay? The line hummed, static, and then, again, the voice. Help, please. Behind. It was fragmented, distorted, but alive. Human, yet wrong. Not human. I could hear the whisper beneath it, the rasping tone I had spent weeks trying to ignore. Now it was louder, sharper, like a blade scraping inside my skull. My chest tightened. Unit 47, you're dead! You're not... My voice broke. The words felt useless against the presence crawling through the radio. The voice cut me off. Don't leave. The words weren't just spoken. They were pressed into me, insistent. A command disguised as fear. I dropped the microphone, heart hammering, hands slick with sweat. The static lingered in the room, crawling along the walls, pressing against my ears, curling around my thoughts. I stumbled to the monitors. Nothing. Streets empty. Patrol cars parked. No sign of him. No one. And yet I could feel him, or whatever it was, moving through the channels, through the air, reaching. I tried to reason. It had to be a prank, a glitch. A recording looped and distorted. But the desperation in that voice wasn't mechanical. It was alive. And it knew me. I grabbed the microphone again. Unit 47! Listen, you're dead! This isn't real! My voice cracked, barely audible over the static. The reply was immediate. I can't. Leave. Don't. Help me. It wasn't words anymore. It was a sound, raw and wet, layered beneath the voice. The hiss, the rasp, the something else, pulsing like a heartbeat. And then I noticed it. Just faint, just at the edge of comprehension, a figure in the darkness of my office. Not solid, not fully formed, but a silhouette that pressed against the walls, stretching, curling, moving in ways that defied logic. I spun around. Nothing. Only the humming lights and the cold air brushing my skin. But the feeling didn't leave. It never would. I realized then that the whisper hadn't just been a sound. It had been a trail, a thread leading me here, to this night, to this moment. And now it was patient, expectant, waiting for me to understand its shape. The phone rang. I jumped, heart in my throat. Picked it up, hands shaking. Empty line, static, and then faint behind the hiss, the same voice. Help! Please don't! Leave. I slammed the phone down. Sat in the chair, head in my hands. Sweat poured down my face. The room seemed to pulse with it, as if the air itself breathed with that presence. I could hear the whisper curling through the vents, through the monitors, through my thoughts. I wanted to leave. I wanted to run. But somehow, I couldn't. My body was frozen, my mind tethered to the sound, to the pleading, to the impossible voice of someone dead. The whisper grew louder, sharper. I could feel it in my chest, my head crawling under my skin, bending the edges of reality. And then I understood Unit 47 wasn't dead. Not fully. Not the way I understood life and death. Something had taken him, layered itself beneath his voice, and now it was reaching out, reaching through me, through the radio, through everything I thought was safe. I could feel the static pulse, a rhythm I couldn't ignore. The voice, calling again and again, each repetition more urgent, more raw. "Help! Please don't leave," I whispered back almost involuntarily. "I don't know how." The air shifted. A shadow moved across the monitors, flickering like it didn't belong to the frame. The temperature dropped. My breath came out in white puffs I hadn't expected. I could feel the weight of eyes in the dark, pressing, patient, hungry. Then, the worst sound of all, a wet, gurgling laugh layered beneath the voice. It was not human, not alive in any way I understood, but it resonated through the room, through the radio, through my skull. I covered my ears, pressed my face into my hands, but it didn't stop. The line crackled again, and the words came, fragmented, torn, but clear in my mind. "You can hear me. You can see me. Stay with me." I realized then that I couldn't escape it. Not the station, not the streets, not even my own mind. The night shift never ended. Not really. It had begun when Unit 47 screamed, when the line cut, when the whisper crawled under the static. And it was eternal, looping, patient, pulling me in like it had pulled him. I looked at the monitors again. Empty streets, parked cars, no one in sight. But I knew. I could feel the weight of something pressing behind the cameras, behind the walls, behind my eyes. Watching, waiting, hungry. And then I heard it. Not over the radio. Not in the speakers, not even in the recording, but in my own voice. Repeating, layering, overlapping, distorted. "Help! Please! Don't leave!" I screamed. Or tried to. My own voice joined the chorus, tangled with his, with the whisper, with the presence that had been waiting for me to hear, to understand, to answer. And in that scream, I realized the truth. It never ends. The night shift never ends. Not really. Not when the dead can call. Not when something ancient and patient waits behind the sound, pulling the living into the echo. I don't know how long I sat there after that. Hands over my ears, head pressed into the desk, listening. The line went silent at some point. The monitors flickered. The shadows receded slightly, but I knew it hadn't gone. It was patient. Watching. Waiting. Weeks later, I still hear it sometimes, faint in the background, curling around the edges of my thoughts. And I know with a certainty I can't explain that it will call again, that it will find me again, that the night shift never ends. Not for Unit 47, not for me, not for anyone who listens too closely. And when it calls next, I'll answer. Because I already have.